Ma ma ma. Ma 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 ma. In a world where one freak is the man of the hour, everyone is asking, "Hey, did you see this one?" Oh, hello.
Oh
I
god,
don't know
that
what that
was
is.
so lackluster. Oh, hey.
I don't know what that intro was, guys. I just
I know, you should have said, "Are you ready to experience a new dimension in terror?"
well,
Because that's the
We're hitting
tagline of
you
the
with
movie.
3 different dimensions.
you should once you get your computer up and running, maybe you could set up OBS and you can host from your end, so you can do the little intro bit. Or
I already have IBS, and it's terrible.
what is going on, people of Earth? It is Wednesday night, and you know what that means. We are talking about movies on Hey, did you see this one? I'm your host this week. My name is Jason. And joined as always, it's Kaylin and it's Steven. Hello, gentlemen. How is everybody doing tonight? Are you ready to talk about the hit 1982 classic horror movie that really kicks off the real motif of what Jason looks like now, except for, his shirt. He doesn't have the jumpsuit yet, but he looks like
He has a jumpsuit. He's wearing a jumpsuit in this.
At one point.
Almost the entire time he's wearing a green jumpsuit.
No,
doesn't he have some flannel, like a shirt? Yeah,
that's at the beginning when it's a flashback from the second movie.
No, he's got a shirt and pants on. In the second movie, he's got overalls and a bag on his head.
I think when it's showing like the flannel, that's Rick or whatever the fuck his name is, and they're just psyching you out.
No, not the flannel. When they show him head to toe, when he shoots the Vera in the face, he's got a button-up shirt and he's got slacks on and he's got a Jason mask. Go back and look at
pieces.
He is wearing a coverall at one point, though. Maybe it's the flashback where he's trying to grab ass.
It's definitely the grab ass part, and also he's wearing a coverall when he's skulking around at the beginning, when he's going after the couple. Anyway, we
forgot to tell the folks, get your 3D glasses out.
Get your 3D glasses out, because this episode is in 3D. It's really not. There's no way to do. There might
now
be
presented in smell-o-vision.
Okay. There might be a way to do that. Like there might be some filter that you can get that might allow you to put on 3D glasses, like what Kaylin has. And
man, it should be easy. You just have
the
same image, just kind of overlaid but slightly off center of each other, and then I guess add blue and green filters, or blue and red rather.
Yeah,
that's not how it works at all.
It's kind of how it works. It's how it works in like when it was comic books.
The cartoon, the drawing books, those like 3D.
Which I have a So this movie, Friday the 13th Part 3, is in 3D. I liked it when I was a kid. I saw it referred to frequently as Friday the 13th Part 3D. I did have a lot of comic books that came with the 3D glasses, like what Kaylin has, but they were just paper. Most notably, a Ghostbusters and a Ninja Turtles.
I had dinosaur books.
I had the dinosaur ones too.
For learning.
Oh, not like dun 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 dun.
No, learning about dinosaurs.
Okay.
They made specific paper 3D glasses for this movie, and I kind of want a pair of them, but they're like super expensive.
Like you probably got them at the theater in the 80s.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like cinematic, like historical memorabilia at this point, even though you probably didn't have to pay anything for them when you got them back then.
Yeah,
for the movie ticket.
Yeah, they all ended up in the landfill because people are like, these will never be worth anything. That was a dumb popcorn movie that, like,
Yeah.
It was a dumb popcorn movie. So what we'll do is the same thing we do every week, and this would be a part where I hit a button and there would be a little thing but it's hey, did you see this one? Your history with this movie.
Oh, it's a history of the movie.
When we make one of those, can one of them be like just me saying it horribly like that? Like it's the It's the MPAA rating.
Yeah, as long as you don't mind like another recording of me in the background going, "Oh God."
Yeah. Yes, hussy Phillies. Okay, so this week, since we started with me last week and the week before, we won't start with me this week. I finally got my payoff. But let's go to Kaylin first this week. In your history with the movie, can you give us a brief rundown of, because you're the only one of the three of us that has the DVD version, which is the only version I think that you can get, that, because I looked online, I couldn't, it doesn't seem as though you can get the 3D version without owning the version that you have.
I was thinking about that last night. I was wondering if they made a VHS, a 3D version on VHS, and I can't imagine them ever doing that. Like, that doesn't, like with DVD, it's kind of easy to have both, but with VHS, it's one or the other.
I could see maybe at some point a special edition double VHS maybe coming up, but I don't think this movie was that.
No,
I don't think this movie was that.
This
big.
series was all about making money and not about taking weird risks. Like, let's make a fucking VHS copy of the 3D version,
and then you lose your 3D glasses, and then you have to mail order them from the back of a comic book, because that's like the only place you could get those in the 80s and 90s.
Or a dinosaur book about learning.
I went to the dollar store actually looking for like a dinosaur book or something that had the paper ones, and I couldn't find any, so I ordered these off of.
Well, they don't really do that anymore, because like 3D was a gimmicky thing at one point, right? And like those books and stuff were sold on the idea of 3D when we were kids, but now 3D exists so accessibly in terms of like 3D televisions and going to see 3D movies every weekend, and it's a much better version of 3D than
to the point that like 3D TV has come and gone even. You don't really get...
people bought it and realized like this actually kind of hurts my head.
It kind of sucks. The best
to sit in the center of the room.
The best version that I saw of it was you had the glasses you put
Avatar?
On took batteries. No, I'm talking about a TV.
Oh,
the glasses you put on like took batteries, and you had to turn the glasses on, but it would like 3D eyes non 3D shit. So I watched an episode of Seinfeld, and like it's not perfect. It's very much like when when you 3D eyes a picture on Facebook. Have you guys ever seen that effect? How it kind of makes
it look... I had a TV that did the
like
same thing where it would 3D everything. When I was living at Lisgar, we had a 3D TV and we had the glasses, but it was so terrible.
It's
like it actually was bad. Yeah.
But that said, I have watched 3D DVDs. I watched Judge Dredd in 3D on my my original PSVR, because the PSVRs will show 3D movies, and
cool.
it was fine. Like, it looked pretty cool. So like, if it's good, it's fine. But like, to go back to what we were talking about, 3D is sort of a dead medium, except for if you see it in theaters. And personally, I prefer to just go to the movies. I saw Screen X. I didn't bring up Avatar. I was going to bring up seeing Ant-Man in Screen X. And Screen X was a cool, different thing where the sides of the room light up too. Like, the sides of the room kind of enhance the experience because something's projected onto the wall. But
almost like a 180 kind of thing or something?
Yeah, it's like 270 degrees or something. But the problem with that, they used it sparingly. It wasn't like the whole time. And if they had used it the whole time, I would think it sucked. I would like to see some hybrid of that with glasses that don't dim the movie also. And also glasses that can go over glasses, like, not awkwardly.
That's true.
That's
glasses. Activate glasses now.
Not to name drop or whatever, but Kanye kind of did something like that not too long ago, where he had,
I think it was personally, or
it was kind of like an immersive experience where there was the main screen, and then I think there was the side screens, and then a top screen. So like you were everything that was going on in the scene, like, was like you would see all the angles or whatever.
That's
you didn't need glasses. Like, it was just, you look at this screen or you look at that, like, that thing.
That's kind of what Screen X is, except it doesn't have the ceiling. It just had the walls.
The best 3D experience I've ever had was the Terminator 2 ride at Universal Studios when I was a kid, and I'd never seen 3D before. And when the robot blows up and the skull comes at you, I actually was like, I got so scared because I believed that something was coming at my face. and it was intense. Yeah, you heard what I said. Coming at my face.
The best 3D experience I've had recently wasn't really 3D, but it's the PSVR 2. There's a couple games that I've played. One is the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge game, which is based off of the Galaxy's Edge ride at Disney. And the other one, it's basically exactly the same. If you were wondering, Steve, if you come by this weekend, I'll let you play the demo for it, or we'll just buy it and beat it. The other one,
like, we're just beating it to the game, just looking at it together. No.
Yeah, we'll buy it and beat off. The other one is the Horizon Zero Dawn companion piece, I guess it is. It doesn't really take place in between. I don't think it takes place necessarily in parallel of the second game, but you're this other character. You're not Aloy from the main character from the two games, and you're this like thief.
Her name's Aloy.
Yeah.
Not Alloy.
It's a little on the nose, I know, because of the metal thing. But it's basically like a climbing exploration bow and arrow sim kind of thing. Like it's kind of linear and you go through it. But the thing that's really cool about it is the PSVR 2 you can map your room. And when you're in an area, you can like walk, or like if you have enough room in your living room, or you set it up in a basement, you can actually like walk around in the space. It's not like the old VR experiences where it's all kind of happening to you. You can now
create so much havoc in your space and trip and break stuff.
Die. I move a bunch of stuff out of the way to play VR now because I basically have to.
One of the main reasons I still haven't done it yet is because I'm like, I feel like I might accidentally punch a hole in my TV. Like, I might just try it.
Well, you played Beat Saber.
I need like a harness. I know. Yeah, actually, your original apartment, we were quite close to the TV.
Yeah, and I knocked shit over there all the time. But this is sort of our general history with 3D. Let's move it along now. And
I think it's fair. It's a fair discussion to have.
Yeah, it's a good discussion to have before we get into.
Considering this movie sucks dick.
There's not a lot to talk about in this movie.
That's a little extreme.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I have a lot to say about it, actually.
I have a lot to say about it in kind of a positive light. But we'll get to that once Kalen gets through his history with the movie, but also let us know some little bits about sort of what the 3D added over just watching it on the 2D.
Yeah, and if you can throw in how much you love learning about dinosaurs at any point, feel free to add that as well.
Apparently they didn't exist.
Oh God!
You're one of those.
A joke. I kid.
No, Jews put them in the ground so we'd think.
No, stop this. I hate this. I'm quitting.
I'm sorry. That was a joke.
I did, when I was reading up on the movie, though, I read somewhere that there's a theater that still has the original 3D film of the movie that they show in like around Halloween time, like in October or whatever. But in regards to my first, it
was called The General, and it was in Toronto, and they did it up until 2006 when The General was sold, and they sold the print to another owner, and now that print, I believe, is the same print floating around in Toronto, which is kind of cool because that's where two of us live. We can go watch it, Jason. Hopefully. Keep your eyes peeled for
I'm gonna
Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yeah, I will preface with saying where 3D tech is right now, really the best way to do it is at a theater and just leave it there for now anyway. But obviously the only way it's going to get better is by trailblazing and creating these new ventures. And anyway, so my first experience with this movie was so this is going to be a bit of a regurgitated response, but as said before, about 2 years ago is when I decided to go through the list of the classic horror movies. And this one was so with Jason, without having seen the movies prior, I always just knew the hockey mask version. And so like I saw the first one and it wasn't even him. It's like, well, that's weird, or not weird or whatever, but it was just I wasn't ready for that or whatever. And then the second one, he's got the bag head or whatever. I was like, no. Where's my Jason?
What the fuck? I can't handle this. They keep fucking sticking their finger in my ass and then not finishing the job.
And then this one comes along
calling the police.
And sets the course. They find their stride. we get an awesome character with Shelley. But yeah, so my first time, 2 years.
I don't know if I would say awesome, but yeah.
Here's one of my favorites. The
right.
lovable
the original nice guy.
Yeah. But yeah, I was like, okay, so this is where it like, so yeah, first experience 2 years ago. This is when I'm like, okay, this is now Friday the 13th for me, kind of thing. And 2 years ago would have just been like the regular version or whatever. And then last October, I do believe, is when I got the whole series on DVD. And the DVD copy, I put it in, and it's like, do you want the 2D version or the 3D version? I'm like, what? They have it on here? Perfect. Yeah. I don't have any 3D glasses. So I went around to like dollar stores and Walmart or whatever, trying to find like those old like 3D books that I remembered as a kid to get like a pair of paper glasses for cheap, $1 or whatever. But I couldn't find any, so I ended up ordering. I think it was like a pack of 6. So if you guys want to cop a pair,
but I sent them to all of us. We could all be wearing those cool glasses right now.
My bad. So my first 3D experience was November, I believe, when my glasses came in, and then I watched it in 3D. And so watching it in 2D, you can see the scenes or like the visual kind of gags or whatever that they do that are specific for the gimmick stand out so much, like in the 2D version, like they're doing it for that, but it just doesn't really have any effect in that medium. And then watching it in the 3D version, it's not crisp, like it's not clear, it's kind of fuzzy or whatever. There were a few of those visual gags though that did kind of work. So like the first one with the guy in the clothesline and the stick that was holding up the clothesline falls down and he picks it up and it like comes at the screen, or when the scene of the kids playing street baseball and the scene opens with the bat like right in your face. I was hoping the popcorn would be kind of fun and cool, but it was too like little. It was like quick little pops, and it just wasn't really working that well. The harpoon to the face was awesome. But yeah, so like as far as my 3D experience, it's a fun little novelty, but it again, like the tech's not there for it to really work effectively, unfortunately.
Also, I remember reading as a kid that like those 3D glasses are not good for your eyes. I seem to recall that, which
I've gone cross-eyed.
Which is funny because like they were so prevalent when we were
Wait,
kids.
Are you telling me that having one color on one eye and one color on the other eye is bad for your eyes?
It could be. It could very well be. It's possible. It's definitely
way.
possible. It's definitely a possibility. Kaylin, is that everything? Tell
everything.
Me. I need to know about one more thing that I thought might have looked cool. That when he throws the knife, and the knife comes. Was that okay? Would that look all right? Or was it more like things that are stationary, like the yo-yo?
Stationary was better. Moving things, not so much. Stationary
because they're not relying on accuracy of an actor, or like you can really tell in certain moments that the actor is not focused on acting, and what they're focusing on is trying to make sure that they're lining up the item into the frame. Specifically that clothesline. The guy looks right into the camera and you can tell he's like lining it up to like a tape mark or something. And the guy yo-yoing, he's like so fucking focused. Like he's not like, haha, I'm yo-yoing at you. He's like, holy
something fuck. I noticed about all of
it. I gotta get this yo-yo right.
You can tell it's a 3D scene if they spend way too much time on it. And I find that the same thing happened in that Harold and Kumar. I talked about this last week, I think, but the Harold and Kumar 3D Christmas movie. Yeah. So there's a scene where they throw a flaming Christmas tree out a window, and it's in slow motion, and in not 3D. It looks so weird, and it really reminded me of when we saw that him just hold the bat and holding the stick at the camera like that. The 3D effect looks like
I love it though. I think it's so funny. I think it's so funny to watch something that's like supposed to be in 3D and it's not in 3D, just to like see those moments where you're like, this is hilarious. Like it every time it happened, I was like, joyous. I was like, ah!
But I'm
because
also
I didn't have the 3D, so it was funny to me.
I'm also wondering if there's moments that didn't look like they were supposed to be in 3D. So there's one moment where Fox is goes into the barn and she's just kind of fucking around with stuff.
Yeah, touching everything, every single thing.
She just touches every single thing.
Like she's never been in a room before. She's like, wow, look at all of this stuff.
I was wondering if that was supposed to be a 3D moment, in that the things in front of her were meant to be kind of 3D, and it was supposed to look like she was in 3D space.
No, man. The 3D gag in this era was not like the James Cameron version of 3D where the environment is 3D. It's like the items are coming
just
at you like that. It's only 3D. This way. It's only this way. It's never depth. Like you're never, yeah.
There was I think there was a joke on, I think it was like Full House or something, where they just kept going, ooh,
yeah,
like
well,
Wayne's
that's what it was. And like, so the whole James Cameron like 3D revolution stuff that he was doing with Avatar, the first Avatar, was that he's like, we're not creating, like there was movies that came out before that were using 3D, but he's like, I want to create 3D that like makes you seem like you're looking into a window rather than I'm sorry if you guys can hear this. Like,
no, it's cool. I heard it for like a second, but your mic pretty much kills it. The thing that I've noticed about modern 3D compared to like the visual gag stuff is now they don't play up the 3D. It's more like you're sitting in the room, and if it's raining, there's a bit of, you can kind of see the rain in the theater, or if it's snowing, the snowflakes are like coming
in this
down
era. The gag was, it's coming at you, like, and like you're supposed to be startled by it coming.
Yeah,
at you.
exactly. Yeah.
And that's why it's so funny to me to watch this, because it is like that gag, the Full House gag, like the like that's what's hilarious.
I posit that it would look a lot cooler, not necessarily in a regular theater, but in the setting of a drive-in movie. Like that specific setting might not make it look better necessarily, but that's the ultimate fun you can have with it. You know what I mean?
Feel like, I wonder, did 3D work at drive-ins though?
I'm sure it did.
But the thing is like, well, I'm not certain. I would have to look it up because I don't know for sure. I can't say. But like, I know that
they need 2 projectors.
The thing about 3D is that it's far more complicated than what you guys were saying. Where it's like it's just 2 different colored cells and you put on glasses and it connects them. It's like no, there's lots of other factors you have to take into consideration. Like they would only be able to play 3D movies in specific cinemas and theaters within those cinemas, because the people would be sitting in specific spots where the 3D effect would be accomplished, where it would not be accomplished elsewhere. You know, like you have to take those things into consideration.
You're right. I just looked it up, and a quick search says that it didn't work well in the drive-in setting.
Yeah, it's because
they
there's
did it.
a billion. Yeah, I'm sure they did.
It's about the darkness of the room too, right? Like that's kind of like. Did you watch it in pitch dark, Kaylin, or did you watch with like a lamp on, or like?
No, pitch dark. I just wanted to see the screen or whatever. One other thing I'll add though is I was surprised that I was able to differentiate colors. Like I don't know why that seems surprising to me. I don't know how the brain works. But I just find that really interesting that I was able to actually see different colors.
Like it's because when you look at a magazine, it's usually in just like that blue and red like outline, and you don't get color.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're watching those 2 colors happen, but also that color from the movie is there, right? So those colors came through a bit. That's interesting. Did you find that like it's almost
your brain is pretty sick. We got good. Everybody has a sick brain.
We can
do that shit.
Did you find
brains are dope?
Because I remember there were 3D.
This is your brain on 2D. This is your brain on 3D.
Did I remember?
I know so much about dinosaurs now.
You would find books like those dinosaur books. I remember having one that was like this, and I remember watching movies that were meant to be watched in 3D, but I didn't have the 3D glasses, or maybe there were VHSs out there that had the 3D effect. But I remember that being like, take your glasses off, put the glasses back on, take the glasses off. Was this a movie?
You're talking about, like tell you when
in the bottom of the screen, it would say like, take your glasses off. Or in the magazine, it'd be like, take your glasses off for this section. And then when it's like, I remember with the Ghostbusters one, it wasn't the whole comic. It was just like, there would just be a situation where they're in a room with a bunch of ghosts. And it'd be like, put the glasses on now. It'd be like, oh shit. Do you
Okay,
think
cool.
that this movie could have benefited from? Because obviously there's scenes that just aren't at all 3D.
Yeah.
Do you think they could have benefited from having something like that, or did it just make sense to just have the glasses on the whole time because you could see the color?
I mean, personally, I would say it's probably, I would find it annoying to do the on and off thing, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's probably better just to do it straight through. With with the 3D version, there is a message at the beginning of the movie where it's like the first few minutes of the movie are not in 3D, but you will need your glasses. So it does it picks up where the last one left off, which I thought was way too much. Like, we didn't need to see all of that. Like, they could have edited.
They did that in the last movie too, and I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Is this a trend? Like, are they just going to starting?
I believe they stopped doing that.
Okay.
After this one this is the last one where they do it. Yeah.
Because shit. But in both movies, it's like 7 or 8 minutes.
I mean, if you're gonna do a recap, fine, but like maybe film a new thing. I know, like, obviously the budgets on these movies are low for a reason, because they yield so much cash and they do so well that they're like, well, we can like pad the runtime by adding 10 minutes at the beginning that is just 10 minutes at the end of the last movie. And this is like one of my main criticisms for when I rewatch these movies, is I always forget about these recaps where I'm like, it's not a recap though, you're just showing the last 10 minutes of the movie, and I'm like, I know, I just watched it like not that long ago.
Yeah, especially
the
thing
is they could have just edited movie, like kind of the highlights of it or whatever, right?
But this was like a Saw thing, right? Like, this movie came out 11 months after the second one. It's not like this is like every year they were making these for a little while. And it's like people didn't really need it, I guess. I mean, we live in a different era where you can look up a recap online right now if you forget a little bit of information, but 10 minutes is too much. Like, all you needed to do was show her, getting wheeled away to the insane asylum or whatever, and I would have been like, oh yeah, I forgot.
The third, it's like a lot of the MCU stuff. Like, if you're at the third one, chances are you
know
what's going on. Like, and even if you saw this, even if you hadn't seen this, like, the second one kind of requires you knowing what happened in the first one in the same.
Well, I'll use it as an example of this done so well. So much better. And like, it's a very nerdy example, but it is a good example. It's the Two Towers, the Lord of the Rings.
You movies. Can bring up Lord of the Rings, but I can't talk about Final Fantasy.
You bring up Final Fantasy in every episode. This is the first time I've brought up Lord of the Rings.
So, Jason is kind of like the final boss. No, he's really not like anything in Final Fantasy. Go ahead. Sorry.
So in the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf, in quotation marks, dies. And at the very beginning of the Two Towers, they have that whole moment, the audio of that moment being played over this helicopter shot of a mountain, and then it goes into the mountain and it shows seconds of that interaction between Frodo and Gandalf as the Balrog destroys the bridge, and then Gandalf falls and you see everybody run away. And that's like it's a pinnacle moment in the movie, the first movie. But rather than follow the Fellowship as they run away, you follow Gandalf as he's falling down the hole, and then they have a whole new thing that they show that you didn't see in the first movie. But it is essentially giving you a recap of events, but also showing you new stuff, right? Like things that you didn't see before.
I think,
and like that would be better, right? That would be more interesting.
With Halloween 1 and 2, that sort of, they recap by just showing the literal moments, and then the movie just continues.
And like I said, I know that the budgets are low, and it is much cheaper for them to just slap 10 minutes of a movie they've already shot to the beginning. But like, I'm sure there's other footage that they didn't use in the first movie. Maybe try and cobble something together with that, where like Jason going through the woods or anything, right?
But it was literally just taken from the second movie.
That's what I mean. They probably had stuff that got cut and put onto the cutting room floor from the second movie that they could have used in that 10-minute intro that people hadn't seen before, right? Like, take those bits and those scraps, like table scraps, and try to cobble something else together that's new, rather than just showing us the end of the movie again. It's like, yeah, we saw the movie. We remember what happened.
Why don't you give us your brief history of the movie, because we should probably we were just talking
Yeah,
about
I mean,
the movie.
I don't think I have a lot to say about the first time I watched this movie because like most of you guys, like I was scared of horror movies as a kid, as I've said lots of times before, and then I one day gained bravery and decided to watch all of them. And the Friday the 13th series was one of those sagas of movies that I was like, I'm gonna dive in deep and hard and fast, and I did. And once I realized that they're not actually that scary, it's more about like horrific and fun kills, I got really into it and I sped through it quickly. But this one, unfortunately for me, is one of those ones that I always kind of like spread over a long piece of bread. Like it's a piece of butter that I'm spreading over like a bunch of other, like a lot of the stuff in this movie gets spread to other movies. And I always forget that it's contained within one movie, and so many little pieces
Like
end
your
up being sprinkled throughout other Friday the 13th movies.
like your Child's Play teacher getting murdered thing from
Yeah,
last
exactly,
week.
exactly. It's the same thing where so much of this movie I always forget is just isolated within this movie, and I think that it's actually sprinkled over it a bunch of
Right.
different other movies.
Yeah, that Jason outfit was like, he's synonymous with the jumpsuit, but that Jason outfit that you see him in that I was talking about, like that's that 70s Jason with like the slacks and the fucking button up. I'm like,
Yeah.
that also reminds me of like how I would picture Jason in my head when I was a kid. So
There's lots of good Jason patinas, you know, like he's got a lot of good different outfits. Jason, for a guy who lives inside of a lake, the bottom of a lake, he's got a good wardrobe.
He's got a great weird
Yeah.
ghoul war. He's like a ghoul
But
with a mask on.
This is the first one though that also kind of starts to bring to light the weirdness of Jason, and
Right.
he's not just like a unfortunate man with like.
We'll get to that because I have a lot of insight on what this movie
Alright.
means to the series. Let me
So
just
yeah, for me, the first time I watched it was when I sped through them in the first time, and like I don't really have a specific memory of the first time I watched it. Yeah.
So mine is similar in that I was horrified of Jason as a kid, and this version of him would have been pretty prevalent. This one is like the first time he is the Jason we know him as. The origin story of the mask is in this, and this one I think was the one that was shown at like birthday party sleepovers and stuff, where I'd go cower in the other room and play action figures while all my friends are like, cool, and I'd hear them react, and it made me more scared because I was like, oh, that means something fucking horrific just happened. You watch it now and that's not it at all. It's just fucking like funny gross, not like horrific gross. But the thing,
Jason, you and I are so similar. I would do the same thing. Like I would go play like Star Fox 64 in the other room, being like, oh, they're watching Scream. I'm sure it's scary. It's called Scream.
For some reason, they didn't even rag on me for it. It was prime opportunity to bully
Me
the
neither.
shit.
I think they realized like he's fucked. He doesn't like it's fine. We don't need to make fun of him. Like
the
he's
main
already
one I
traumatized.
remember, there was two that I remember very distinctly, and Candyman was one of them. And I feel like that movie, even now, like that one's going to be one that I eventually watch and be like, oh, that is kind of fucked. But Darkman is like a comic book movie, and for some reason at the very beginning a guy's head gets like run over by a hubcap or something. That's what I remember. And there's like a rolling head, and I remember being like, nope, I'll see you guys in
Can't watch this. This is terrifying. Yeah.
But you watch it now and it's fucking probably goofy as shit. The
Sam Raimi, he doesn't really make horror. He makes horror
comedies. But what I really want to talk about for just a second here is my memory of my parents telling me about the origins of my name, and I might have referenced this on the show before. And it's pretty simple. My dad and my mom were trying to come up with names for me, and they really liked the name Jason, but they were afraid that I was going to get bullied, like so bullied.
But Jasons are always cool.
Yeah, I know, but not sure. But my point is like the name Jason is synonymous with the serial killer movie guy, and they didn't want me to be, made fun of for it or whatever. So anyway, in 1985, Jason 5 comes
Your mom
out.
gave birth.
No, the movie is like the final Jason. What's part 5 called?
The final
chapter. Friday. I think.
Yeah,
the
final chapter, the final Friday. So they saw that and they were like, "He's done, baby." They never make a 6th one of any of these, and they really didn't back then. They didn't make a 6th one. Anyway,
let alone 14
14
more after
fucking
that. Yeah.
10 of them, 10
In this
mainline
one, he
and
goes to hell.
multiple reboots. There's 3 Halloween movies called Halloween. Just putting that out there. So it became a thing because of the Grimoire. But the thing is I always assumed that this movie came out in March. They named me between March and April, right? They were like, okay, we've got this name. Jason's dead for good. And then I assumed that the next Jason movie wouldn't come out. The way they talked about it is that next Jason movie doesn't come out for years. The next Jason movie comes out in August 1986. So there were 14 months or 15 months, 16 months between part 5 and 6. And they must have been like, fuck. So
I don't know.
I
think it's fine to be named Jason.
I also do, but like my parents are
not
boomers,
crazy.
and everybody was a fucking idiot in the 80s.
Yeah.
They didn't have the same follow through with thought that we do nowadays. They didn't have the same self-awareness that we do nowadays. So I honestly just see these like 25-year-olds being like, we got this kid coming. I like the name Jason. It's very popular for the 80s.
This whole discussion reminds me of that scene in The Simpsons where they're trying to pick a name for Bart, and he's like, Homer is way more concerned about whether or not he's gonna get bullied over picking a name they like.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, this predates that. So
was there a reason
they name him Bart? What?
Was there a reason they liked the name Jason?
Just it was a popular name, and there were a lot. The other names that I was considered having were like Christopher and Matthew. So those were on the basic.
I give you a Philip. Kind of look like a Philip.
Then my name would be Philip Phillips. In fact, my wife wants to call our firstborn son Philip because she thinks it's hilarious, and I'm like, really? There's no way I'm doing that.
Not for him, I bet.
No,
Yeah.
there's no way I'm doing it. But on the other end of the spectrum, they wanted to name me some shit like Bear.
That's cool. That's
I think I could pull off a bear now, but I think it would be a different connotation.
I think I could fight a bear now.
No, I think it'd be a different connotation because I've grown into being what the gays
Bear-like.
call a bear. And if I rolled around as a bear being called Bear, I might have to, just live the gimmick, brother.
Brother Bear.
Brother Bear.
Yeah.
Cub Bear. Anyway, my history with the movies, I watched it yesterday. And my new thing, I think, is going to be watch movies on Tuesday nights, watch them all the way through, and not try to jam it into my already.
Yeah, man. I was trying to. We used to try and get them going every Tuesday at my house, like the ones we were doing for the podcast, because it is more enjoyable to watch with some of these movies. At least some of them, it's nice to watch by yourself. But
I'll tell you, Steve,
something like this would have been way better.
You live just too far away.
Unless you get locked out of your apartment, then you come.
Then I go
crying to my house and watch Batman Returns with me.
Please let me in.
Yeah.
But
can I ask a quick question about the origin of your guys's your tag names or whatever, like Spider Hero and Boba Blackfly?
Spider Hero is a comic book character I created, and the 9000 comes from me not wanting to have to make another. Because back when people were making email addresses, they put the year in their address, and I was like, it's going to be obsolete in 1 year. I didn't want to.
So I'm going to use the year 9.
Exactly. Hey, Funk Slinger, all biblical names. It's true. All biblical names in the 80s.
My email when I was a child, from like the first time I got an email when I was maybe in the 5th grade, I think, was Boba Flex. Because I don't know why I thought it was cool, like Boba Fett from Star Wars.
My first one was Cloud. My first one was Cloud 911, and people thought I was being super clever. Like, oh, I get it. It's like you're on a Cloud 911, and I was like, no, I love the Cloud from Final Fantasy, and I didn't have a number, so I put 911 next to it. Yeah, so
I wasn't done talking about mine yet.
I know. I interrupted you because it relates to exactly what you're saying, how it evolves. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be a jerk, and I'm the host, so I'll do what I want. So
yeah, Boba Flex was the email I had when I was young, and then one day I was making Instagram, and I was like, oh, maybe I can use Boba Flex again, like I did when I was a kid. That'd be funny, Boba Flex, like I'm Boba Fett, but like juicing or something, and it was already taken. So I was like, oh, what? Fuck that. But I had been making this like fantasy series of things that was called like Blackfly Chronicles, Stories, Tales, or whatever. So I was like, I'll call it Boba Blackfly, and then that's where it came from. So it's a combination of my love of Star Wars, my first childhood email, and a fantasy thing that I was writing at the time.
Very nice, very nice.
Kaylin, tell us about yours.
I
accidentally misspelled my own name.
Well, we have some Greek family friends, and the father calls me Achilles. I guess kind of because so like the story behind Achilles, there's like the goddess and then some Greek guy, and then they had Achilles or whatever, and they always called my mom Princess Di.
Wow, that was you just really kind of breezed over the tale of Achilles there hard. He helped he's the guy who used the Trojan horse to get inside of the city of Troy.
But the part of his story that relates to my name or whatever. So like
when you got stabbed in the heel.
Well, because they call my mom Princess Di, and then there was a Greek guy or whatever, and then here I am. So I guess kind of like along the same, like that same sort of story sort of is where it came from. And then I think it might have been Tyler, the creator, that inspired me to switch the first two letters, kind of like where he does like Golf Wang or Wolfgang or whatever. And I was like, oh, if I switch these letters, it's kind of like Achilles. It's a killin'. So Achilles, but with an N. And then also like entendre, I'm making a killin' or whatever, right? Like if
I didn't know it was pronounced like that.
Yeah, I always pronounce it asylum.
Yeah,
like you should be locked up in one, you psychopath.
So it's those were the origins of our handles.
Why did that happen? I guess you know what. Here's why: because the origin of Jason's mask was this movie.
Yeah,
and it was great.
I guess we can get into it. We've never taken 45 minutes to do our intro before, so that's new. That's a new thing.
We also talked about a lot of stuff. So.
That's true. We talked about a lot of stuff that are threads in this movie that we're going to go back to. So I'm going to go...
How about the funky theme music intro?
So, that's perfect. I'm going to kind of go down my notes, which are sort of it's not like the whole plot point for point. I made more like thought notes as I was going. So I'm going to try it that way this time because I feel like we'll just get to a point and talk about it for a while, because there's a lot of... This movie is basically the first movie, which is the second movie, which is basically the first movie, in that the conceit is that some kids are going to Camp Crystal Lake. Sometimes
we should also mention that this movie was their fallback script. They had another script that they weren't able to use. They originally wanted to have the character from the last movie who survived be locked up in a mental institution, and Jason was going to come and haunt her in the asylum.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
It probably would have been a lot different than this, but instead they're like, let's just do the paint by numbers, get a bunch of sexy teens, throw them in a cabin, and we'll get them killed.
The sexiest teens today.
How do we make it different? They're not camp counselors this time. They're just friends.
They're just
and
there.
One of them lives
to that point, I thought so. Okay, I don't care if he's just some crazy killer that goes around killing people, but I thought that there was a reason behind his killing.
Well,
this one kind of makes it seem like there isn't.
I have a theory. Welcome to Jason's Theory Corner for this week.
Hold on, what?
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. There's actually, I have two theories corner. One of them is like viable, and one of them is just stupid. This one is the more viable thing, and actually, now that you've told me that the movie is like an alternate plot, and it makes sense because we have that thing where she has a memory of meeting Jason. My theory is that flashback scene actually takes place before the first movie or simultaneously to it. And it's not that far-fetched, but it makes
it is.
Why?
Because he's a child still. Remember in the end of the first movie he's like a little boy, and then the second movie is like much later. Camp Blood. 7 years ago, Camp Blood got murdered by all this crazy shit. So, and she said that instance happened the summer before.
Okay.
So 1 year before.
Okay, let me rephrase, because that's a good point. This happened
Both your theories are insane.
Is a prequel to the second movie.
Yeah.
My other theory, while we're still in Jason's theory corner, this movie all happens because when they're on their way, the hippie dude is paranoid because he won't stop. He's smoking weed like I've never seen people smoke weed before. He's like smoking a joint and then lighting another joint, and she's hitting the joint, and they're just passing the joint, like smoke your own joint, and they're just smoking joints, and then the police like speed up.
Stoners are a very loving, sharing bunch.
I get that, but if two people are the only two that are smoking weed, just smoke your own.
I misheard his name when they said it in this movie, and I was like, is his name like I thought they said his name was like Bless or something, like something that's not
Henry,
what I thought it was. It's Chuck, I think.
Or Chuck and Chili. Yeah, the girl's name is Chili.
Chili is that one. Chuck. Yeah.
Chuck. Anyway, my theory, my even more far-fetched theory is that because they have to eat all of the weed that they eat, they never leave the van. They're just tripping.
This whole movie's a hallucination.
He's just tripping out, and he's like remembered a story he heard about Camp Blood, and he's like,
they all eat the weed.
He's listening to the sick tunes.
No, they're all eating the weed. They're all trying to get rid of the weed.
Not everyone, because they're pregnant. Also, she's pregnant. That's true. Why did they throw that in there? What the fuck? There's literally no reason for that to be. There's so many interesting little character tidbits in this movie that they don't ever follow up on.
Who's pregnant?
They never give
the
people who are having sex all the time.
Oh,
was it
Andy and
Debbie and
nude
Debbie
handstand?
Yeah, Andy. Yeah,
handstand and nude boobs.
Yeah, handstand and the person who went on to become a journalist who was heavily involved in the O.J. Simpson trial.
The funny thing about the girl in that couple
is that she became a journalist who was a person on the stand in the O.J. Simpson trial. I know, it's pretty crazy.
As it relates to this movie, though, she has a scene where like she's about to have sex with the dude, and she covers up and they don't show it, and I'm like, oh, so okay, cool. They're doing a little. It's a little bit more.
They're not showing nips in this one,
but then she fully showers for 5 minutes.
Yeah, but you don't see her nips, only like a little bit.
A little glimpse.
At one point.
Little
you see it. You see it enough that it's
that you're seeing it, but not enough to be like, I'm gonna masturbate to this as a 13-year-old. Whatever.
Listen, I could have figured something out. Okay,
I would have paused it. But you'd think that in a 3D movie like this, they would have tried to figure out a way to have like tits like 3D at you, right? Like somehow.
That moment where he's laying in the...
They didn't.
That's exactly what I thought was about to happen. That moment where he's laying in the hammock and she's about to get on top of him, that would have been a prime opportunity. But I don't know if that would have put a hard R rating on the movie or...
Well, yeah, this was, I think, around the time that they were starting to be like, no boobs and blood. You can have boobs or blood, but not both.
You can pop a guy's eye out, and you can have a soothsayer character holding an eye. But the soothsayer character who's holding an eye, it has to look like a nondescript item, and the eye flying out has to look extreme.
That didn't look like an eyeball at all to me, right? Like, I was like, what is that?
Yeah, it looked like
a rabbit's foot?
Sheep's eye or a cow's eye, yeah.
Well, because they showed the rabbits all die at the beginning, so I thought it was going to be... I thought it was like a rabbit's foot or something at first, and then somebody was like, "It's an eyeball," and Shelley, the voice of reason, is like, "Don't touch that! Don't touch it! Nobody touch that! It could be disease."
I love that this movie. I think is this the first one of these besides? Oh, I guess there's the guy that dies in the first
third
two movies.
One.
I know, but thank you. Is this the first one of these of all of these that has the literal like you don't want to go down that road?
No, the first two movies have actual man. Yeah.
That man,
and it's the same guy in the first two, and then the second one he gets killed.
He gets murdered
by barbed wire around the throat or whatever. Yeah.
This version of the soothsayer character is much more to the point and only in it for a minute and almost dies by getting run over.
And then he goes like this. The screen with an eyeball that still doesn't look like an eyeball to me, like a dried up cow's eyeball or something.
I think Kalen's right. I think it was a goat or a sheep.
Yeah, it's an animal eye. It's not a human eye.
The thing
we should talk about, the 3D gags, right? Like I know we went through a lot of.
I have them in my notes as
I know, but I just want to talk about how many they throw at you in that first sequence of like the convenience store husband and wife who hate each other or whatever. Well, actually, it doesn't seem like the husband doesn't seem like he hates the wife. He seems like he's more just like annoyed with the wife, but she seems like she fucking hates his
Here's
ass,
how I
like,
interpreted their relationship. He seems like an idiot, carefree, happy-go-lucky guy who loves wildlife and sneaking some bourbon, sneaking some snacks, sneaking some bourbon on the can. The ADR that they, or not ADR, but the Foley effects they used for him sitting on the toilet might have been the most realistic shitting sound I've ever heard in a film, ever. I couldn't believe it that they put that much effort. The sound was in Hero Vision. Is it like
what I couldn't believe is that he was hiding his whiskey inside of a beer case. He like opened a beer case to pull out a bottle of... No, it was like Coors Light cases, like stacked on top of each other. Like he's hiding it inside of anyway, whatever.
More alcohol.
But she, I think that I think she was stuck with this man. She looked like, she didn't have.
Yeah, she's got the curlers in her hair. She's probably trying to look good.
If she didn't have the curlers in her hair and she had like a bit of makeup on or whatever, I think that she's much too attractive for him. That's the vibe that I got from their relationship.
I got the vibe that she's still trying to like look, because like they purposely are trying to make this person who is clearly attractive look unattractive, like by putting the curlers in her hair, making her just walk around in her house coat, and she's constantly like scowling.
She's so scowling.
Even while she's watching TV, she's like,
she's the stereotype.
You only have so many options in small towns, okay?
She's the stereotype. But she was clearly a very attractive woman, is my point. And he was clearly a very 70s guy.
Yeah, just
balding and afro.
But he loves animals. Remember when he picks up the rabbit and he hugs it and he offers the rabbit a donut? You're like, oh, this guy's a sweetheart.
They heavily implied that rabbit is a wild rabbit. Because she's like, I know that he had that cage with the rabbit in it, but she's like, put that filthy animal down.
No, she says put it back where it belongs, which is the cage is in the barn, which is where he goes and finds the dead rabbit.
That's where my head went, and then as I was saying that, I realized that I remembered.
I remembered that I'm wrong.
But
that's Jason's way of saying you're not wrong, but
Jason is skulking around, not me. Jason, the murder man, not me again, is skulking around the premises at this point. And he fully pulls the head off of a rabbit. Did you guys notice when he walks in and puts the rabbit down in the wheelbarrow, he just kind of drops it into like a bowl or something that's in the wheelbarrow, and the bowl
something like flips over. Yeah, I did notice that.
Like it's a lot of like, we got it in one take. That's the best take we had.
The thing is, this movie, like, they were setting up those 3D gags so much more importantly that they were like, we don't have time for this other shot because it took us 4 hours to set up this 3D gag. So just walk through and do whatever you want. Yeah. And it'll be fine. A lot of Shelley moments, I can tell that the actor was like not sure what to do, and like I'm like, the director wasn't giving this guy direction. Like he was just saying like, just be yourself or something, you know? Like there's moments where Shelley like looks directly in the camera and it's in the movie and you're like, what the, this guy just like stared into the camera for a couple seconds there, which is terrible.
Yeah, I know, that's like 101 filmmaking. Did those opening credits, Kayla, I forgot to ask, were those fully in 3D? Like, did they pop out at you?
No, but it did have a little, like, I'm not sure if like because it was in red or something, they kind of felt a little more highlighed, but it wasn't in 3D.
Okay. Wow, that's surprising because it seems like they were really
it should have been,
exactly, 3D effect.
And that probably would have been the best use of it for like just the font, and stuff, right?
And to get people hyped up for baseball bats and snakes and shit. So like, I just wanted to say that within that opening sequence, because this is about when he dies, right? Like he gets killed and then she gets killed.
There was one more thing that I wanted to mention before that, and it was a 3D gag, I believe. But the whole snake thing, what the fuck was that?
Well, it's implying that the snake killed the rabbits. It's in the rabbit cage.
Oh, okay, but did you when they show the actual rabbits through this snake strike? It's clearly got a bunch of strings on it. Like it's like
that's how they got it to come towards the camera. They
pulled
the strings.
Steve, I get that, but it's such a poor animatronic setup that.
Yeah, but I mean, we're watching it now on like high definition televisions and like prints that have been pulled over. Like it probably was not nearly as apparent, and they didn't worry about it. They're like, no one's gonna notice it, and if they do, it's fine. They'll forget about it by the time the baseball bat comes.
That's a good point, because the whole thing would have been too that like the screen wouldn't have been in like you're in a dank theater. There's probably the mist of cigarette smoke, right? You can still smoke in theaters.
Back in the day, you can do that.
And then the projection quality isn't as good, even though film is better than digital. But even back then, like the actual projector had to like be of a certain quality. So I guess that's a good point. The 3D might have actually worked better on a shitty, like in the pitch dark movie.
Yeah.
Movies.
Also, fun fact: the snake that they beheaded in the first Jason movie, the real snake they killed on camera. That's the snake they used for that 3D effect. They saved his corpse and dried it.
There's no way.
Yeah, no, I'm not making it up. I'm not making it up at all.
Because Steve is a bad liar, I'm gonna give you. I pulled up a list of facts from this movie. I'm gonna give you a real fact right now.
I just thought of that joke. I made it up just now. I hadn't even thought about it until this moment, until you started asking about that fucking snake.
Right before Debbie is killed, she picks up a copy of Fangoria and turns it to an article about Tom Savini. Tom
Savini was only 23 years old at the time and then went on to make all of the masks for Jason 4.
The man responsible for all the gore in some of the Friday the 13th films. Also, the man who does a lot of the gore for The Walking Dead. And that makes me want to talk about our inability to watch these movies as kids. But I'm watching The Walking Dead right now again. Like I picked up from where I left off. And the writing is bad, but the horror element, the gore, and the fucking spookiness is off the charts compared to these movies that supposedly would kill me if I watched them. These movies would destroy my soul. This movie's also
set primarily during the day, which really...
We've talked about that a bunch of times in the horror movies we've done. The whole John Carpenter month. We kept bringing up that like when John Carpenter does shit in the daytime, it's like... It's not great. It's not good. Great. You need that.
But I mean, you can use daytime to be spooky and weird and off-putting, but like it can't be threatening. Like it is creepy at the end of the movie when Jason's like, and he's like looking through the window. Through the window, it's creepy because he's in a dark little.
He's trying to get out, and it's like.
But then when he comes out and is like running, I'm like,
you look like Chunk from the Goonies.
This isn't that scary. And then the majority of the movie is like the biker gang showing up and like all that stuff. And you just don't see Jason really, but he's there. But because everything's so well lit, you're not as creeped out. And because the characters feel safe because it's daytime, you're not in it with them where they're like, hello, oh my hello. You're just kind of like, okay, this guy doesn't know that he's about to die. But he is, and I know he's about to die because I hear Jason going.
To go back to something we were talking about last week, and we've talked about this about like the third one in a trilogy before. This is an earlier example of this because the style of filmmaking was different. But this, compared to the first two movies, this is the like Secret of the Ooze or the Batman Returns, where they take the formula and it's like it's like prettier and shinier. But I think what I'm realizing through talking about it is they just did that by making most of it happen in the daytime. And there's a big thing that I don't hear a lot of people ever talk about. The barn in this movie is like
why is it such a set piece? Like, why do they keep going back there? Did they make that barn or something?
It's basically the setting of the movie. Like, this barn is haunted by Jason because he's clearly living in or around it to lure people in and murder them in hilarious ways.
That's an interesting thought that I hadn't considered, Jason. That would be so much more interesting if they established that Jason had started living inside of this barn. Like, underneath it. Or, like, in a back corner of it or something that's like covered with shit. And like they even establish that when what's his face Rick is like pulling that hay up, he's like, I don't understand. He sounds like Hulk Hogan. I don't know if anybody else noticed that. He's always over please, hey, why do you have all the hay? And she's like,
bumpkin.
Every year my parents decide they're gonna buy a horse and then they don't buy a horse, and that's why we all have all this hay. They could have made like this giant hay thing,
and
like
he
this
lives
big
in it.
Stack of hay, and he's just like living inside a hay room.
That'd be cool.
I was reading that they reused the apparatus or whatever for the Kevin Bacon kill from the first one for the Debbie kill in this one
through the like shoulder blade bit.
They probably reused it for the eyeball or the knitting needle at the beginning, because it's like he's holding his hand over her mouth and it's coming straight out. but you can tell it has like a weird kind of curvature at the front. You're like, that thing's been fed through a pipe like a million times for certain.
Or like just around his arm.
Yeah.
Also Harold, when he gets up, he gets spooked. Just to go back to the beginning, they get killed.
Right.
The couple. He doesn't wipe. Just wanted to point. He took that business.
Nobody wipes in this movie. It doesn't exist. They've either got Japanese toilets or nobody. Yeah. Everybody's got a dirty butt.
They all have dirty Camp Crystal butts. The other thing I wanted to mention, to go back to this bit in the first
Camp Crystal.
Yeah, Camp
Higgins Haven.
Crusty Astle. The man of the hour, Rick, the country bumpkin guy, who is in love with Chris, but also not. I can't really figure out the relationship through this whole movie. He fully says
they had a romance the previous summer.
Right. I know, but like where they stand now is the confusing part, because he says
he wants to go forward. She wants him to slow down.
He literally says to her, though, and I know.
Interesting fact, if you would hear it for a moment, the actress who plays that character was a devout Mormon.
That's why she
refused at any point
down the blouse.
Refused at any moment to have her play a role that indicated that she had already had sex. So she was like, in no way am I going to imply that I have already had sex with this other character, which I think sort of plays into like him being like, well, I think we should have 3 hours a day where we devote ourselves to our carnal pleasures, 1 in the morning and 2 in the evening.
He's a very overtly sexual dude, like the pervert in the second movie.
Yeah, but he's also like nicer.
But he's nicer. But the thing is like he kind of like attacks her for the kiss at the beginning. I know it's supposed to be like, he's big. This dude looks like he's 45, and she looks like she's age appropriate.
Yeah.
So he's got like a full man jaw and like 5 o'clock shadow, like after like 15 minutes. And
yeah, he doesn't look like he's in his early 20s for sure.
Or he looks like he's in his early 20s, but it's like the 1920s.
Yeah.
But my point is like he does that moment where he like kisses her way too hard, and then he says, well, I gotta take cold showers all the time. And then he fully says to her that like, I could have been hanging out with Bonnie McClover
with Vicky McHore across the lake.
I could have been hanging out with the old town bicycle. Yeah. You call me over here to move
and she's like, the Vicky McHore. Oh my god.
So that's the vibe I got off this dude. He ends up being a pretty good guy, and he gets his head squished. He
doesn't even freak out when his car gets completely destroyed.
He's like, that's understandable.
And they don't even tell him. Like, they don't tell him what happened. He's like,
no.
I don't know about this anymore, guys. I don't know why we're all here. Like, I didn't know your friends were going to destroy my windshield of my car. And you're like, oh my god, this guy's also maybe a dweeb, like a idiot. Big jacked hot dweeb.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
one of the best kills though in the movie.
I think it is the best.
Pick. Yeah.
I think it is like the climax kill, because he's the last one to get murdered, right?
One of my I think he's the last one besides her. No, actually, Ali shows up and turns out he wasn't dead all along, and I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
He should have been. So what I would have loved.
The way that it looked, though, is he fully got his face hacked with a knife.
That's what I thought.
But it was very unclear if it was like a billy club or a knife that he was.
I thought it was like a monkey wrench. Is what it looked like.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like one of those like cleaver wrenches or whatever. I don't know. Is that what it's called? A monkey wrench, where it like closes? You like.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it looked like one. But the joke that I made is like, is he killing him with a turkey leg? Like, it just looks like a turkey. And the noise it was making was very like meat on meat. It's just like. But also, yeah, he hits him like 5 or 6 times, and he killed the other 2 so quickly that you're like, okay, he's dead. Seemed like a waste of a fun group of characters. These guys are like the weird, like the Warriors or some shit, like some weird gang that are
I couldn't help think that like, is this town big enough to have a fringe punk group? Like, these guys obviously play in a band together, right? Like,
well, the way I looked at it is that they were also like traveling through, like they were just passing through, right?
They're crust punks from the city who ended up
fucking,
maybe they were
they're not like that's not their home base. They're not locals.
Yeah.
They're also passing through. Like they're just other characters from another movie.
I'd like to find out that they were there
ended up at the same gas station.
Investigate the murders. There's always like murder. Like this is 3 years, 3 times running. I guess there's an 8-year gap, but that there's just like a bunch of dead bodies now that they have to deal with.
Yeah, in the area. Yeah, the same area. It's like it's a swash. It's not all at the camp because this isn't the camp. This is Higgins.
Right.
This is Higgins.
But it's on the lake. Like it's on the lake.
Yeah,
I think it's the same lake, but I don't know.
They never mention the lake. I don't think
they do.
Not that I can remember.
Well, the shop that they go to is called Crystal Lake. Blah blah blah. So the town is at least the town.
Well, it's Higgins Haven is the sign.
Where they are. But the general store or wherever they go in town.
Does it say like Crystal Lake General or something?
Yeah. I noticed that because I was very confused.
I should have been paying more attention to that. I was way too into getting invested in the 3D eggs.
Well, once
so many 3D eggs.
Once
the wallet, throwing the wallet.
Once they throw
that one was brutal.
Once they throw us the curve,
that was their best take. He couldn't hit it in the center. It's like, come on, man. We did it 27 times. And that was our best fucking take. It's like goes off to the side. Like this guy can't throw his wallet at the lens.
Once they throw us the curveball that Chris was here before, I was trying to figure out because at this point I didn't know. I forgot that the first movie there's like a 7-year gap, kind of like last week's Chunky, with the 8-year gap. Let's tie it all together. It's the Grimoire of Familiar Killers. What was I saying? I fucking lost.
I don't know.
I lost my train of thought so hard there because I
feel like we supposed to be
curveball with Chris was there before. You didn't realize.
Right. Sorry. I was thrown off by Chris being like, I was here the year before, and I was like, how does this fit in? And really, this is just a story that happened simultaneously to the previous year's story, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Because, I think what the implication is that, like, he kills them, or kills all the campers, and then, like, because she's, on the news. The woman is, like, looking at the news at the beginning in the general store. So she's like, they're like, oh, lone survivor of a psychopathic murderer. So, like, I feel like this is a couple of days after.
This happens a couple days later, but the flashback happens, sorry, that's what I meant to say. Happened simultaneously, or before, or slightly after. Slightly before.
A year before. It was supposed to be last summer that she was there.
Yeah, but
last year when I was like, I got slightly molested, maybe, I don't know, and then I fell asleep and then woke up in my bag. Like it's so vague of what
that was dumb.
It was such a stupid. Like every other character is so much more interesting than her character.
But that's clearly
and she has a moment where she sits down and is like, this is why you have to be invested in me, and I'm like, because you got
that's clearly
attacked?
It's clear they had another script.
That's why you're interested,
because that's an insert storyline. They were just lazy. That's an insert.
But every other character has so much more set up, right? Like that's what I'm trying to say, is that like almost every other character, except for the two that have sex all the time, they're boring.
They're just
except like one of them walks around on his hands all the time. Like, was this in the script, or did this guy just show up and be like, "Hey guys, I know how to walk on my hands. You want me to just walk on my hands everywhere?" And they're like,
that's what happens.
Yeah.
As long as she uses nude in the thing, and as long as we can go like this and
listen, 3D. She also had the most successful career out of everybody else in the whole movie.
What are you talking about? I saw Shelley and stuff. I'm pretty sure.
She became a journalist and sat on the stand for the O.J. Simpson trial. Had definitely the best career that had nothing to do with acting. But anyway, but Shelley was more interesting. What's her name? The one who wears all red. She was even a little bit more interesting.
Vera was my favorite. Vera was my favorite.
She was the smartest. She's the only one.
She was plucky.
But she's also the only one in any Jason movie who like realizes when Jason shows up, or any horror movie up to this point, when someone shows up in a disguise, where she's like, "Hey, I found your wallet," and then she's like, "Wait a minute, who the fuck are you? You're not the guy I was just talking to at all." And then she unfortunately gets shot in the face with a harpoon, but like,
which wouldn't have killed her outright potentially, which means she definitely drowned.
Yeah, she probably was dying.
She was probably like that's not a guaranteed death in the eye People get shot
But
in the
it
eye
goes
all
into
the
your
time.
brain. Wouldn't that hit
Not
your brain?
necessarily. It could have gone anyway. My thought
Could
was
have gone south, could have gone north, could have
It's
east,
much
could have
more-
gone west, could have missed the brain.
because nothing scares me in these movies. I had to make it more horrific for myself. Just like last week when I had to really go down the psychological horror element of Chucky tricking all those kids into murdering each other. This one I had to be like, I was like, oh, that definitely, she is just in agony and drowned.
Yeah, I also think that like her and Shelley's interaction was genuinely interesting to me, where he was like trying to get her to like him via his weirdo
because
behavior.
he's Jonah Hill getting Emma Stone.
What? Yeah.
From McBig or whatever the movie's called.
Super bad.
Super
Right,
bad.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
big.
that's like, I guess an apt analogy, because he uses his idiocy to try and get her to like him, and then she's like, I like you for you,
And they
not
both
for your
have
weird
fat.
shit.
They're both fat with afros.
What? Oh, Jonah.
Jonah Hill
Yeah.
and
I thought you were talking about Vera.
Listen,
No, Vera
let's
is
stop talking
fine.
about the physical attributes and talk about the similarities of what's happening in the movie.
Vera's fine. I hope. I assume she was like 25 playing 16. So just gonna.
Oh my god. This
What?
is how Justin Roiland got canceled.
No, I haven't groomed anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
No, you said that.
Anyway,
I wouldn't
let's
even
just
know where
talk
to
about
start.
the movie. So she is actually like, she has a lot of charisma, right? And she's
Right.
fun, and she's like being like comedic to a degree, and she's also open to like working with Shelley, and like, you know, she's like, I got to get out of here when he pulls the gag where he pretends he's dead,
Which
And
was
that's when he
great.
first-
Which was a great special effect, by the way. Like I knew he was faking it, but it looked like they just used the same special effects they used for other gore scenes.
Yeah, like he knows how to. Well, that's what his whole box was. I assume is just like a makeup box of like horror effects or whatever. Which they in the next movie, the fourth one, they really go deep into like. I think this is like Tom Savini being on set with being like, "Would it be great if a character was like into monster makeup?" Like, I think that's like what the whole next.
That's a
movie is
perfect.
about.
That's a perfect Tom Savini. I've seen him on the Talking Dead TV show because he directs a lot of episodes too, and he's kind of just like a goofy nerd. He's got like a beard and like long.
He
looks
loves
like
monster makeup.
he looks like Rick Rubin, but like he is just a nerd about details.
He's also in so many movies. If you ever,
He was in,
if you
Dusk
keep
Till
your
Dawn.
eyes open, you'll just be like, "That's Tom Savini." All of a sudden, yeah, he was in From Dusk Till Dawn. I think he's the guy with the gun dick or whatever, isn't
The
he?
dick gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his idea, I assume.
Yeah, he's like, so I got this idea. It's like a gun, but it's on my belt, and it's my dick.
And Tarantino's like, you know what? That's a little far fetched for me to come up with, but
No, Tarantino was like, I wouldn't put it in one of my movies, but, and then Robert Rodriguez was like, sold.
yeah.
Let's do it. So what was he saying? Oh yeah, Shelley does the gag, and then what's her name? I call her All Red because she was wearing all
Vera.
Vera. Okay, so Vera runs outside, and she's like, I gotta get out of here, and then he follows her, and he's supposed to be her date, right? Like that's the established thing.
Yeah,
the beginning.
the Spanish family where the mom's like yelling.
Yeah,
in
we also
Spanish.
get like a weird little, not a weird, but like more of a swash of like character background that we have for any other character. We know that she's got a Spanish-speaking mom who's very strict, and she's not allowed to come out.
But she just does.
And then and it's not like they're just going out for the night. She's like, let's go to a cabin in the woods
For multiple days.
Multiple days, yeah. And she just leaves with them. But she takes the car, she takes Rick's car, and then she drives away. And, you know, Shelley's like, let me come with you. And then she's like, fuck off. But then she stops and lets him get in. And he's like super duper excited. And I don't know if you've ever liked a girl like in a very specifically small amount of time, or a guy, which I've done both. And then they like give you a little bit of like a leeway to like open up a situation where you can be with them for like a private amount of time. It's a very exciting moment. And like the way he's running, I'm like, I felt that feeling before. For sure.
The moment that I think about in relation to that is when he's like, it's so dumb too, because it's such a weird moment, and then they kind of play cat and mouse. But he goes, he goes, I really like you. I like you so much. Do you like me? And she's like, hold on a second.
This is later. This is way later, though.
I know. We've been jumping all over anyway. But for the sake of this, she says, like, hold on a second. I'm going to go outside for a minute, and when I come back in, we can talk. And then shenanigans happen. But that
you've skipped over so much important information of the interaction between these two. I'm sorry. I really think that it's pertinent to all of it.
Okay.
Because it is important.
Okay.
It's important. It's important that they go to the store, and it's like important that they have the interaction at the store with the biker gang.
Well, let's take us through the store. So he runs up, he's feeling the butterflies in his stomach, gets in the car, they go into town.
He is like, this is my chance to prove to this person who I'm supposed to be on a date with, who I find charming, and or you don't really even know that yet, but he's like, I'm attracted to her, I assume, because she's attractive. And you've already got his moments of I almost said self-deprecation.
All in there.
Where he's like, they're all going skinny dipping, but I'm not skinny enough. Like he's like putting himself down, and you're like, all right, buddy, put your sad sacks stuff it in a sack or whatever, as Kaylin would say. Stuff your sad sacks in a sad sack.
You sad sack.
And they get to the store. He pays for everything, but there's the interaction of the motorcycle gang, who we think is led by Fox, the woman with the bandana and the leather jacket, right. But maybe it's not run by her. She seems like she's the girlfriend of the leader, Ali, and then you got this other guy who just perpetually got a cigarette in his mouth, and he looks like a fucking dildo. And they play this game where she throws the wallet, or Kelly throws the wallet, and then Fox picks it up and is like, makes her say, like, give me the wallet back, please, ma'am, or whatever. It's stupid. But also there's like a moment of like weird, is it racism? And I didn't really think about it until
food stamps thing?
The food stamps thing. Because I had forgotten that her mom is like a Spanish speaking lady, and I was like, so she's supposed to be Latino in some way, right?
I think it was like you're a kid. But that is actually
it's like, why do you say food stamps?
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's definitely a systemic racism of the era. That some country bumpkin would be like, oh, this person's Mexican, and
we don't take no food stamps. And it's like, excuse me, like, what the fuck is that supposed to be?
To be fair, she does go, Hoof! And then be like, Shelly, I need money.
Yeah, I guess she was about to pull out her food.
She's about to pull out like one food stamp. You're like, is this enough? Mm-hmm. I didn't think about
this bag of fucking Pringles or whatever the hell they were buying.
But that's a good point, yeah.
So then, this is where you introduce the wild card, the element of a Jason movie that has not been introduced yet in any of the other Jason movies. It's always the camp counselors who are all friends or frenemies, and they all know each other. But in this Jason movie, we have 3 bikers who are scary and mean.
I'd like to bring up a popular segment that I do on this show called The Home Alone of It All. And I'd like to discuss whether or not...
No, sorry, that's not it.
Or whatever. Is the Home Alone of it all, does it begin when the bikers are introduced? Because the action ramps up pretty significantly, but I would also posit that the Home Alone of it all is when Chris actually gets back, or when Jason goes into the house and systematically murders everybody. I would say the Home Alone of it all.
The Home Alone of it all is when Fox is swinging on that rope, and she's like, "This is fun," and then she disappears, and the rope is swinging by itself.
And then the murders start happening pretty consistently, because the murders that happen in the house at night while the windstorm is happening are all much closer together. Like there's the 3 kills with the gang, and then night falls, and Chris and Rick leave, and then Jason goes from one person to the next and takes them all out.
Yeah. There's like 2 Home Alone.
There's like 2 Home Alones of it all.
It's like Home Alone and then Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Lost in the cabin.
Oh no, do I have to make another recording for that one? But I just want to get through this moment where, they leave, they have the, or Shelley says like, next time I'll know how to deal with something like that. And then he backs up into their bikes. And then there's this like cute moment where Ali comes up and he puts the hands on the car. But at first he does like a weird like he's gonna like he stops the car with the Matrix powers that he has.
We get a great 3D moment here too.
The smashing of the windshield.
When he punches with the chain on his hand, it goes right into your face. Did you get punched out by that, Kalen? Did you get knocked out completely?
No.
I did. When that happened, I went.
My mouth,
my teeth, my lower jaw.
I'll give you a little acting advice, Kalen. I'll give you a little improv advice. You should have said yes, and my mouth started bleeding.
I was bleeding so much everywhere.
I'm no actor. You've done more stand-up and more acting than I probably will ever do. However, it's very important that if somebody asks you a question, you say yes, and.
I'll add
yes, always.
You can also say so to move things along. The most important part of this is that he then backs up and then he turns around and comes back at Ali again, and Ali abandons his bike and he runs over the front of their bikes and takes off. And this is the moment that he realizes he's done something that she finds to be very impressive. She even says like, "You did so well, you were sick." And he's like, I was sick, wasn't I? I was sick. And he like drives over the horizon and Ali's like, what the fuck? And he's like throwing his hat and being angry that his bike just got run over. And so like that moment there instills in Shelley that he has now the confidence to talk to her about like, do you think maybe we could like sucky motherfucky like later or something?
I think he should have gotten at least a kiss on the cheek to imply that she was, because as soon as he tries to have the talk,
I think that
I was like, no, he's gonna, because the same thing also just happened in like The Walking Dead has been weirdly paralleling the Grimoire this month because I'm watching them at the same time, and there's a similar moment with where I don't know if you know these characters, but Eugene is like almost gonna die, and then he's about to.
Eugene's still alive?
Yeah, Eugene's awesome. Eugene's awesome.
Is that the guy with the spiked bat?
No, that's
the guy with the
Negan.
mullet.
He's the guy with the mullet but now he's got like you know how like there's like the braided like long hair that like typically indigenous people have. But like also like cowboys can have them. Anyway, he's got that and like stubble, and he's like lost a bit of weight, and he's not as like grating. Like he's got some social skills now, and he's
not a super autism man,
and he still is.
Oh,
but
okay.
you kind of learn that he's like that because he's read so much that he just puts all these cliches into the way he talks because his brain is just so full. But anyway, he has a moment where he like is about to admit to Rosita that he loves her, and it's the same moment where she just puts her hand over his mouth and is like, we'll talk about this later, we got to get out of here. Yeah
Well, yeah, I think that in that moment where he's like, I like you a lot, I know we just met, but I was wondering, and then she's like, I don't think so, but I'm gonna go outside for a couple minutes and I'll talk to you later,
and when I come back in we'll talk about it.
We'll talk, but she says we'll talk, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. If she had just given him a little kiss on the cheek, he wouldn't have gone into like weirdo mode and
back
put
into
on a
weirdo
full
mode,
wetsuit and found a hockey mask that he probably brought with him.
And a harpoon gun.
Yeah. And like, but when she leaves, he says, yeah, okay. And then he goes, bitch. He calls her a bitch. And like, she was being very nice to him. And I was like, oh, this is like the original, like, I'm a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And you only want to go for like fit
Chads.
Idiots who are going to treat you like shit.
You
and
want
like,
Rick,
oh
don't
my
you?
God.
You want Andy
You're
and Rick, and even Chuck. You probably like Chuck more because he's got weed and women want. This is a great conversation to have on International Women's Day,
It's the
by the
perfect
way.
example of somebody calling somebody a bitch when it's like actually an issue, where you're like, oh
Yeah.
no, that's not when you use the word bitch.
That's
Like,
incel. That's incel fucking
level
behavior.
Yeah. But like, he isn't fully an incel yet because he's at least trying, right? Like he's
going to base the rest of his life on this experience should he survive the night.
Oh, he would have become an incel
after
this weekend. But he isn't one yet.
He cries murder wolf too many times, and then when he finally gets murder wolfed and tries to warn Chili, I think. He's just and that.
Well, he goes. No, he's not warning anybody. He's just curious. He goes into the barn because he.
No, after that, when he like the next time we see him, he's fully like Cuban necktied, and he's trying to be like
he's looking for help. He's trying to find help himself. He's not trying to warn anybody. He's like, I've been throat slit.
It works as a warning.
But... Yeah, it works as a warning. Yeah. I fully like when that moment happened when he goes to the barn. It's implied that Jason gets him, but I thought like I'm watching this movie the whole time, and I've missed so many things.
That was the only moment where I was like, wait, when did this happen? Did I blink too long?
Why do you think they didn't show that?
I missed bitch. I missed that.
Because they've already established several times that he's like a prankster, so they wanted it to be like you're not sure as the audience kind of thing. But so many people have died at this point that you're like, he's dead. Yeah.
And also he looked completely like he had no like he had dark circles under his eyes. He was pale. He had a wound, a 6-inch wound on his neck.
But, we are, I guess, at that point supposed to be like, oh, he's dying for real, and she doesn't know. Oh, but because he's been doing this so many times, it's like the get out of jail free card for her to just be like interacting with him and being like, don't be an idiot. Yeah. The popcorn is burning. The lights are going on and off.
Because a dude just got hilariously electrocuted. I don't think we're there yet. So we're 3D yo-yo we talked about. The guy and the girl go bang. Some street toughs show up to siphon gas and all get murdered systematically.
I like Fox trying to eat the popcorn popping out of the pot.
Yeah. I was worried about Chuck and Charlie because they ate all their weed on the way up there, and they
didn't eat all of it. They just had a mouthful each.
Probably croaking for some weed. Actually, a bunch probably fell on the floor of the van too. One of my favorite scenes in the earlier part of the movie that to introduce those characters was suddenly the van's on fire, and I was like, nah, there's more characters. There's this, they're stoned, and
it's Shaggy and Scoob. They're in there.
They just poke their heads in. We get a shot of the guy and the girl. Chuck and Chili both hitting massive bongs, like massive.
Chuck and Chili are the only ones that we don't get any kind of backstory on, and I kind of wish that we did a little bit more. Like it would have been great if like Chuck was like they're all college students or something, and Chuck was like their professor, their cool professor that they invited.
He looked older,
like a weird humanities professor,
and has weed.
Like, listen, every year I go on a road trip with my students, and it really expands all our minds.
He even says he's like smoking 2 joints at the same time, and he even says like it's not like it's like illegal, man.
It's not like it's 4 joints at a time.
It's not like it's illegal, man. And the dude looks fully like a character from like a stereotypical.
But he's not
hippie.
doing the weird classic stoner voice either.
No,
he's
that's
doing
true.
Sort of like like when he goes down into the cellar, he's like, "Oh, it's dark in here. I hope there's no one down here." Like it's like the same thing that like I would probably say if I was going into a dark cellar, and if I was high, I would it's like things that I would think of saying if I was going into a dark cellar, and then if I was high, I would definitely out loud say, "I hope there's no one down here." Yeah.
We got a 3D scene when Fox is climbing up the ladder after she's just touching stuff in the barn. Was that meant to be in 3D, Kaylin? Do you remember that at all?
I think they wanted it to have more impact than it did, but it like because she's climbing up the ladder, so you get her kind of coming towards you, but you don't get the protruding really.
Okay. Loco finds Fox pitchfork stuck to the wall, and then Loco.
I wanted to mention the best moment in the movie, which is when Loco does this.
Fox.
Just like a crazy, like he doesn't move his head at all, and he only moves his eyes around.
Just the best side eye in the game.
It was maybe perfect. Like it was maybe the most perfect like head pop up, and only the eyes move around and scan the horizon of a tiny room. Where I'm like, and he still doesn't see that she's impaled on the wall, like right next to where he came out.
The Friday the 13th movies have a lot of they have a lot of time to fill, so we get a lot of in the first 2 it's camp counselors just sort of doing stuff like swimming. In this one we get the yo-yo scene, but we also get the juggling scene, which I think had some moments that were meant to be in 3D as well.
There's like multiple shots of it, the top of them, where it's just shit going up.
And Shelley is an amazing juggler. He was probably hired because he was such a good juggler. Although they all seem to be
apparently they found Shelley on the side of the road because he had that big hair and everything, and like they were like, this guy is exactly what we need.
He's the worst actor in the movie, so that tracks.
But he also has the most like dynamic and maybe interesting scenes in the movie, which is crazy. Like hold on. This guy's not an actor, but he's doing a better job of acting than most everybody else.
So, we talked about the weird almost nudity, and I even made a note. They almost usually, in these kinds of movies, go full-on bare.
Yeah, tits out.
Yeah.
Hardened nipples.
Okay, so Rick and Chris have that moment where they talk about the last time they hung out, and then she tells the story about Jason, which we covered already. She just wakes up in her own bed, which that's never explained. I
think that they probably wanted to make it seem, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I also think that the studio was like, no, he can't be that kind of bad guy, because if we want to bring him back, like we want him to be a fun thing, and that would bring down the tone of the movie. Like it would make it seem like you can't have fun with Jason after that. It's okay for him to stab people, but it's not okay for him to.
It works for Freddy. It works a bit for Freddy because he's such a despicable person, and that's. I don't know. It's sort of maybe it doesn't
work for Jason because of his origin story.
Yeah,
like he should basically hate that.
Yeah, he should. Yeah, because he hates he's a.
Well, that's why I think that Shelley should have survived this entire encounter, because clearly he's a virgin.
Jason's a weird, like, anti-hero in a lot of ways, in that 80s way that...
if you've ever seen Friday the Freddy versus Jason, they use him as, like, a tank. They're like, we can use this thing. He's just a thing.
He's just a thing.
He's not real.
He's a ghoul. He's the classic horror ghoul. He's zombie.
I'll be right back after the washroom. I'm sorry.
I'm going to get through some more of these points because we're already at fucking 10 to 11 somehow. We talked about the movie during our introductions to the movie, which really changed the dynamic of the episode this week. So the stoners go to the
bringing you 3 different types of dimensions.
3D tits. No.
Length, width, and height.
Yeah. There's the scene where the stoners hear something and go to the barn. And they just kind of get stalked. I think that's when Jason starts his stalking portion. Yeah. Then we get all the stuff we talked about with the scuba gear and Vera, and Shelley pops out of the water. Full scuba, he's got the mask on. I wrote that they must have done this purely for the gag. And then they were like, oh shit, that mask is scary. I don't know. I wonder if they were premeditative about ending.
The thing that I read was I forget what their role was exactly. One of the production people or whatever. They played hockey a lot, and so like they had a bunch of gear and stuff, and like, hey, let's try this out. And then I was like, yeah, that looks pretty good.
Works better than the killer's mom, and also a lot better than Bagface, because Bagface is like scary in a leather face. Hills Have Eyes kind of a way. It's not scary.
It's not terrible. Yeah. It's
not scary. It's if the movie was about a bunch of incest rednecks, then it's scary. But if it's about a serial, like just a monster, you need something more iconic.
Yeah, I think that the reason that the Jason face works so well is because it somehow gives you like the most neutral characteristics of a human face without any expression whatsoever.
Nose bump, eye holes, cheekbones.
And to look at it, you can see everything around it, everything that's wrong with this figure. But then to look at that, it's just like...
And as the movies go on...
There's got to be something behind there, right?
As the movies go on, his grotesqueness bleeds out like almost over the mask, you know? Like
I honestly don't think that there is a movie where it is like growing over like in a severe oppressive way, but like I kind of want to see that, right?
I think
Yeah.
I want to
Jason
see like
X,
the
Like
kinda
he's
goes
been
over
dead
the
for
board.
20 years, like literally dead and buried for 20 years, and he just hand
or like
hand
he's
out of the
growing,
ground.
like it's like he's growing around the mask, and like
Yeah.
that's one thing I wanted to talk about briefly with you guys is like this is the first one where you start to realize he's not just something with a deformity. There's something else going on
Yeah.
because he got, they show it deliberately at the beginning of this movie, like he got shoved through the shoulder, and he pulls it out at the end. And in this one, he has this like giant sort of like mass
Well, he's got a
on his
crazy
shoulder.
thick neck, and he gets thrown out of the barn at the end. Like the
I
first.
know, but sorry, you're jumping ahead. What I'm trying to say is that like that wound that he got seems like it healed into this like lump.
Oh, from the second
And
movie.
And I'm saying it's almost like a mutant power
Yeah.
from like X-Men or something, where when he gets like attacked or destroyed, like he starts to grow and like he heals from that wound, but it becomes like a mass or like an addition to his body rather than it just being damaged, where he's like slowly becoming a skeleton. It's like he's healing over top of it.
He is a
at
lot
like
more
a weird rate.
His shoulders and his neck, which we'll get to when we get to it, like very, very shortly here, but he does seem to have a bit more of like a hunch to him, and he's like moves like this. He moves like
and it's specifically on one
like the
side. There's
penguin.
like this sort of like large mass, and it's like where he got struck with that thing. And like if you look at the stuntman, like it's not, they didn't like, the stuntman didn't have a big lump on him. They added that lump there specifically. So I'm like, were they thinking like we're gonna make this big lump from where he healed that huge wound? And I'm like, is that something that kept going forward? Because he gets electrocuted, he gets drowned, he gets all these different deaths start happening. And I'm like, are they adding to his wound so that he's just like this thing that's healing, and it's like he's having these swollen points on his body from all the crazy things that
and then
happen to him
eventually
in every movie?
Eventually, they put a futuristic adamantium nanotechnology on him, and it just.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that they could easily induct Jason from the Friday the 13th movies into the X-Men universe and explain that he's a mutant
he's
who is just obsessed with murdering teenagers.
the Blob's brother. He's got
But no
the
actual
similar.
mutants have tried to kill him yet.
He's Scarman. All of his scars like
Scarman,
super
yeah.
heal.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just pivot here. Just I'm kind of gonna move through it because we've talked about a lot of the stuff that we're actually at plot wise. But I wanted to talk for a second about when Vera's sitting at the edge of the water. The whatever they're lighting that whole area with, I thought was really cool. Like they almost made her look like a Disney princess or something. Like they wanted you to feel feelings about Vera. I feel like
I think that she also was
like she represented
She was
crushes and what they wanted you to have a crush on
Yeah.
her.
but her as an actor, she was also like working above her pay grade. Like
Yeah.
for what she was told to do in this movie, she was working. And
She was
doing a
plucky.
good
She was
job.
probably improving. She was probably thrown in some.
But
extra
I mean,
stuff.
even stuff where like she stands up and she accidentally drops the wallet, and like I absolutely believed that she accidentally dropped. It wasn't like a like she didn't fuck it up. She like stood up and like brushed it on her thigh and it fell in, and I was like, "Oh, the wallet, you idiot!" And then she was like reaching for it, and then she stood up and she had this look on her face like, "Oh shit, I need to get that wallet." And then she is looking around for something that she can grab the wallet with, and like all of the subtle sort of like emotions that she had on her face of just trying to get that wallet, I was like, this is all believable. Like I believe that she is concerned with that wallet right now.
But unfortunately, Jason shows up, and like you said earlier, she's like, "Hey, stop fooling around with that mask again." And then she's like, "Oh, wait a second, you're 6'5", 300 pounds.
Yeah, who the fuck are you?
Who the fuck are you?" He shoots her with the 3D effect of the harpoon, which looked cool. Kaylin, you said that one looked pretty good.
I mean, like, so again, like any stationary 3D shots.
I'm picturing
Great.
Kalen in his living room, and he's like watching it in like an actual harpoon, like it was in the wall behind him. And he's like, "It was all right. It was all right."
Anything fast motion though.
That popcorn, I was like, that's definitely meant to be mind blowing next generation technology, and it just looked like shit, like not in 3D.
Yeah.
But I like that he was trying to grab it with his mouth.
Yeah,
When it cut back to him, he's
that might have been an improv. Andy gets so we get okay, this is another thing that I wanted to talk about. So Andy's handstanding all over the place after they bang. She goes into the shower. We get a bunch of weirdo, booby shots. But he's in full handstand. He sees Jason, and we get like a weird like camera angle from below of like a mannequin getting chopped. But it's really that was another like the snake earlier. Like it was just really it's like a flash with some blood.
You didn't like that? I thought that was pretty like ugh. I was like, oh god. Okay. It cuts back to him falling, and you're like, okay.
But there's no blood, and there's no. But the way that the blood.
The cut when he cuts downward, like the legs split open, and it goes down further, and there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood.
Yeah. But when we actually see him, so the implication there is he got bisected from the crotch down.
It's pronounced bisexual.
Fuck you.
No, yeah, he got bisected from the top,
from the tip to
the tip, and he folded. But like, when it cuts back to him just falling over, it doesn't look as it doesn't look as gruesome as it did from.
But I'll tell you,
the second time you see him,
he's up in the rafters,
and you can see like that insides a little bit.
That was cool. Yeah. That was one of the moments in any of these movies that was like disturbingly gory comparatively.
But it was also one of the moments where you're like, what the fuck is this idiot talking about? Where she's like reading the magazine like, oh, Tom Savini. Oh, Godzilla. Godzilla's been around for 25 years. That's pretty and then like blood is dripping on it, and she's like, and she touches it, and she's like, where is this coming from? And then she looks up and sees this disgusting mangled corpse of her boyfriend.
And then she gets...
before she can react, she gets stabbed.
She gets Kevin Bacon. She gets She gets what we in the business call a sixth degree of Kevin Bacon. Which I thought was a good use of... if you build these props... and you're making your movie on a shoestring budget, just go to that warehouse and get those props and use them the fuck over again. Why not?
Yeah, and they used 6 packets of actual bacon in the chest to achieve the effect.
You keep saying... tonight you've been on this weird streak where you keep saying everything like it's fact, and then you say that the punchline is like so... out there, like so, like couldn't possibly be. But you got me in the beginning, so I'm like, wait a second. So
hold on a minute.
Good work. You're putting in work tonight.
But I also wanted to say that that's not the only time that somebody says, "Where is this coming from?" in the movie, because later when everything's flooding, the main character, she gets dribbled on. She goes, "Where is this coming from?" And then she looks up, and you're like, "Yeah, up. It's coming from up, man."
So the
fuck you mean? Where is it coming from?
The next
from above you.
The next bit is our boy Chuck. The power goes out. Chuck goes down into the basement. Is the water in the basement at this point because of
the storm? I think
because of the storm, not because of the situation that's happening simultaneously upstairs.
No, because it's an outdoor cellar. You've got
he crosses the yard, but it's just a windstorm.
As soon as I put my foot into like wetness,
nope,
no way.
No, if I'm going to check the electricity,
that's probably the scariest part of this movie.
If I'm going to check,
when he puts his foot into a wet, damp cellar, what kind of nasty bugs are in
his barefoot. Let's be real.
Barefoot.
Yeah. This dude is walking around barefoot this whole movie. It stuck out to me like a sore foot. I couldn't believe
that's character accurate though.
It is, but you can tell when he's walking down he's walking down gravel at one point, and I'm like, oh, that's the most hardcore thing for my empathy ever. I think my problem as a kid with horror,
even when he's walking through the barn, earlier, and there's like hay everywhere. Like hay is not the most comfortable thing to walk around on barefoot.
I think my problem as a kid with the gore was my empathy, and I was like, I felt the person getting killed when I would see it accidentally on TV.
But now you're like, ugh, damn basement on bare feet.
Yeah. But I grew up in a place, in a rurally kind of suburby kind of rural place where my feet were like acclimatized to walking around on grass and gravel and like forest floor barefoot, but just because that's what we did.
I still walk around on, if I don't have shoes on, I walk on like the the palm. What do you even call it? Like this part of your
tippy,
hand,
the tippy,
Add the palm,
the top.
I guess it would be the
palm.
palm of your feet.
The top of the ball of your foot.
Ball?
No, the ball is the back part.
Could be both. Could be like this.
Well, anyway, I essentially walk around like a fucking velociraptor if I'm wearing bare feet.
Also, I fully said out loud, this guy's going to get electrocuted when he left the building, and as soon as he put his foot in water, I was like, he's going to get electrocuted, but he doesn't get electrocuted the way you think he does. Mm-hmm. Jason just pushes him into the fucking...
It would have been cool if Jason just was like,
he pulled a wire,
right? And like...
Which is, that's how Jason kills people. He usually does, he's kind of like a Chucky in that way. He likes to do those like murders that happen like as a comorbidity. Nope, he just fucking pushes them.
I do like that he just hucks him though into it.
Yeah,
and he grabs onto it and it's like
and then he just goes back upstairs and fucking kills Chili with a hot poker from the stove. But the thing,
he kills Shelly at some point first because Shelly being like
but when he the thing, they do have attention to detail in this movie, because when he does take the hot poker makes its way from the sheath over into the fireplace at one point. Somebody goes to like tend to the fire, so you see it move, and like, oh, it's like a Chekhov's gun thing where that's getting used as a kill. But then
they do that
Jason,
a couple of good times.
But there's more to the bit. When Jason stabs her through the gut, it's red hot, and when it's on the other side, it's out. So it's not hot. It's not hot. It's smoking. But they did make it so it was put out by her.
Speaking of masks, Jason's mask being introduced in this movie. We all wear masks.
I'm Ben Stein, metaphorically speaking. I do that movie for the show. Let's see. Jason has Chili is fucked. Hot poker right through her gut. Cool effect. Let's see. Rick and Chris return to find 6 fucking corpses.
Yeah, and Chris is like, "Oh, what? I don't know. They're your friends. Oh, there's something blocking this door.
Don't touch it.
Hold on.
Yeah, and they do.
And she's like, "There's something burning in there," and he's like, "Oh yeah, there is. Smells good though." Too.
They do a bit of a cat and mouse, but Jason gets Rick and has him, and
so fast too. That's the other thing. Too many. It
reminds me of this one reminded me of the video game a lot. This one reminded me of
this is how the video game would work. Yeah. This is just how it would work. Yeah.
Just him like strafing and fucking moving forward really fast and like teleporting.
You'd hear like a and then like it would get cut off. You'd be like, oh no, someone just died. Their microphone got cut off because Jason killed them. But that's also, I was going to bring this up earlier, the head crush.
That's one of his kills in the game.
It's one of the loading screens in the game as well, and it's like Rick's face, like, and the eyeball's like about to pop out, but it hasn't quite like. The game, I noticed, takes a lot of notes from this movie in particular. Well, Shelley's a character, Fox is a character.
I think that's where I was going. Like through this whole movie, I'm going, man, I fucking know Shelley from somewhere.
You're like I feel recently. Like I like this one so much more, and it's because the video game is, for some reason, this one it takes a lot. Even the song, like that ding 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 ding, ding, like it plays in the fucking game.
Can you find the barn in one of the
the barn you can find, and the cabin they're in with the spiral staircase. It's one of the main the Higgins Haven or whatever the fuck. It's
Haven
one of the
ranch or whatever.
Yeah.
So Chris is on one side of the building and Jason's holding Rick on the other, and he crushes the head and the eyeball flies out. It's supposed to be a 3D. I don't think Chris sees it. She might see the body like go limp. I can't remember, but anyway, she goes back in.
No, she doesn't see him at all. Yeah.
He gets
thrown through the window later.
They play cat and mouse now, Jason, and it's basically the same ending as the last movie. Where she's, gets to the vehicle. Now, there's a little bit that we forgot to mention, or we might have mentioned it, but...
Is it the bloody tub where she pulled all the bloody clothes out of the tub? She's like,
what? Where's coming from?
You're like, why is the whole... My parents' cabin flooding.
Earlier in the movie, the goons actually were there to get revenge for their motorcycles by just siphoning gas out of the van, which I said they're going to use. I said at that moment, I was like, that van is going to be used in the final scene to escape. Then she gets in the van, it starts up, and she gets it going. But the weird part is she pulls it onto a bridge, right? And the bridge is clearly going to give way. But then it seems like she just says gas and then turns it on again, and then
reserve.
It works,
reserve.
Yeah. There was there's like a little plunger, so in the past, reserve gas was like a thing you could have. If you ran out of gas, you could pump it in. And that's something that does not translate any longer. Like now we have like electric cars and shit, right? Like it's like no, that doesn't work that way anymore. But
she gets it going, but then the fucking van gets stuck.
Because the bridge is wonky, which they do establish at the beginning of the movie when they drive in, like they show the planks being like clunk, 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 like when they're driving over top of it. And you're like, oh, this bridge sucks. You guys need a better bridge.
It was also around this moment that I realized that like the main character of this movie, Chris, basically I would say she's the main character because she, but she is not in the third act of this movie except for when she's telling the story about how she met Jason.
Character,
before.
It blows hard. It's almost like she is only there to have a final girl moment.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You can have one, but I think we all would agree that Vera would have been a much better final girl.
That's true. I agree.
Was way more interesting.
I agree with that, but like Vera was so caught off guard and such a like nice character, but Chris actually has the experience,
and smart.
I think that's true. But Chris has like the experience, so I think that's the implication there. She actually fights back because she's like. She knows how this dude moves, is how I interpreted it. She actually fights back with a knife, and we get the 3D. Jason gets the knife and throws the knife at her, and we get a 3D effect for the knife throw, which I thought.
Which also in the games.
Yep, that's right.
Jason picks up knives and is throwing them on the fucking plate. And like, this is the only movie I think where he throws a knife, so that's something they used. Yeah.
I thought that knife throw would have looked cool in 3D. I was wondering about that one.
One day.
Not today. Today's not.
I do think that the motorcycle gang, they siphon the gas specifically because they were going to burn the barn down, right? Like that was their whole plan. Was like we're going to burn the whole barn.
Oh, I thought that
they didn't burn themselves first with the third guy smoking.
Yeah, he almost blew them all up.
Which his name was Loco, but he should have just been called Cigarette.
Yeah,
his name should have been Cigarette.
I thought that they were just stealing the gas to have the expensive gas, but they were taking.
Well, that's why Fox was
like,
I don't think we should do this because like Fox was like nervous or whatever. Like we really shouldn't do this. And then the reason he sends Loco over to the barn is because like they're gonna burn the barn down.
Okay.
As like revenge for fucking their motorcycles up or whatever.
So Chris ends up in the barn in the rafters. Jason's in there like pulling stuff apart, freaking out, like. Just trying to murder.
Look for her,
objects.
And she's on a beam, and she
slowly, of course,
does a cartoon character style.
Yeah, she was perfectly positioned.
Kaylen, we all asked that same question.
She was perfectly positioned to completely survive that. Nope, she just slides to the bottom and falls on him.
She has like one lopsided butt cheek or something that like really threw her weight off.
40 extra pounds. So at this point, she manages to get him noosed. And throws him over the edge. He gets hung, and she goes downstairs and she opens.
Hanged man.
Hung or hanged. I'm hung.
I'm sure Jason is probably hung.
Yeah. I'm gonna assume you met me. She opens. First of all, we get a really dumb scene where she's trying to open the barn door that's been latched, and she's bashing it from underneath, and it keeps popping up and popping back in, and I'm like. I get that she's weak and young or whatever, but like, why was she, like she's also dumb?
I think that's this is an example of like we got maybe 20 to 25 minutes left of film. Just if you got to hit it once or twice, just get it off there because she's like we can't keep cutting over here.
Anyway, she gets the barn door open. Jason's hanging there. This is when I realized that Jason's got his superpower is neck. and it ties into what you were saying earlier. He's got some sort of turbo neck that can't. It's like when Frank tries to kill himself like a bunch of times in that episode of It's Always Sunny, and he can't.
His neck is so full of muscle that like he can still breathe easily.
He's like that character from 90 Day Fiance. That was the meme that has no neck, where he's just like shoulders and then head.
Or that like 3D projection of like what human beings would need to look like if they survive a car accident.
That's what Jason is. That's what Jason is. But he falls down and he starts coming at her some more. And I got the Ali, was that his name? He's still alive. Ali, yeah. He helps out. They struggle, and she fucking axes him right in the face. And I think that axe wound on his mask stays.
I believe you are correct.
For the rest of time.
I think the
rest of all of Jason movies,
yeah, except for the fake Jason.
Yeah, fake
Spoilers.
son. Wait,
what movie is that?
Fake Jason?
Isn't there a fake one where it's blue triangles instead of red, and it's because it's someone else pretending to be him or something?
Oh,
I don't know. I've seen 3.
Listen,
Jason.
I haven't watched these in a long time, and I know enough about the lore to like be able to test you guys sometimes. But Kaylin, maybe you're fucking.
Kaylin's watched these way more recently than you.
Recently,
pretty sure. Yeah. So let's see. There's a 3D effect of the 3D effect of Jason coming at her like as like the final scare before she axes him in the face.
Yeah,
was a pretty good one. Then she makes it to the boat and escapes. They show Jason like dead with a fucking axe in his head, and then she wakes up like in the morning in the boat, and every single thing is jump scaring her. Like a bird crows,
a duck
lands, a stick gets near her, and she's freaking out. And then that's when we see Jason fully unmasked in the window, and we get like several straight up shots of his unmasked face, which is very like, the horror movie thing where you don't show your monster till way later in the movie to build that suspense. I feel like that's what this implied. They were like, show his face as a payoff thing.
It was unsettling though too.
It was very unsettling, but he did look a lot like, is it Chunk? Is that the name of the guy from the Goonies with the eye that's loud?
Oh yeah. I think so.
Hey you guys.
No, Chunk is the fat kid.
Chunk is the fat kid who does the fat boy dance or whatever.
The truffle shuffle.
The truffle shuffle, not the fat boy.
I think they
dance.
have similar names though.
Yeah, it's anyway.
No, his name is
Chong.
Shit. His name's Kang.
The Monkey Man, Monkey Face. So then we get the exact same ending as Friday the 13th Part 1.
Sloth.
Thank you. Except for instead of the creepy boy Jason popping out of the water, it's now Jason's mom popping out of the water to grab Chris. Notice the eyes.
When she popped up, I'm like, is that his mom?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. Why?
Also, the eyes are
still
still
what
closed.
I said was, whose mom is that?
Also, wasn't she decapitated? So
how did she reattach her own head and get her body back?
How'd she get that sweater back?
In Rich Friday the 13th fashion, though, we get it was all a dream as she gets taken away in a cop car, laughing and crying because she.
But this also implies that she knew the legend of Jason, or that supernatural shit is happening.
Exactly,
and then. In the fourth movie, which we will see soon enough once we reopen the Grimoire in a couple of months, that Jason is a supernatural character.
The thing that makes me laugh is that there's just an asylum near Camp Crystal that
it's just full of people who almost got killed by
3 girls now that are just like, Jason's gonna get me. Jason's gonna get me.
Well,
I did like her maniacal laugh. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Well, if you guys remember the beginning, the beginning of the second movie was the same deal. They showed the end 10 minutes or whatever, and then they showed the character from the first movie getting murdered. Like Jason went out of his way to go kill this person.
Oh, right.
Which shows that like Jason doesn't just stick to the lake, like he'll go out there and murder.
He might go to Manhattan. He might go to space. Who knows where he's
Yeah.
going to be? He might go to hell.
Listen, I think we've talked about this before. Like, I really want another Jason movie to come out, and I want it to be part of the canon. Like, I don't want it to be a reboot because they already did that, and it was fine. It's actually kind of good. I don't know if you guys have watched the Friday the 13th reboot. It's kind of good.
No,
I've watched all 4 reboots of each of these Grimoire chapters that we're doing.
Cool.
One of the best things about the Chucky franchise is that reboot they made, people liked it. It was fine, but they didn't like it enough to like not make this TV show that is happening happen, and
like,
the TV show
that.
is part
That's
of the original canon.
That's not a
just
reboot.
like no. Like the whole Chucky
Forget about
franchise
that.
is
This
just
TV
a
show
big,
is a
giant,
direct sequel
crazy,
to the Cult of
complicated
Chucky.
thing.
It takes place moments after the Cult of Chucky ends. So that was our conversation and review for the film Friday the 13th Part 3D. We're going to talk now about our final thoughts. Kaylin, why don't you start us off again?
Why, thank you. So I put down, it's a fine addition to the franchise. Your classic promiscuous teens being hunted down one by one. As we mentioned earlier, like, this is the Jason that I know. Steve, I believe you made a comment that so we were talking group chat earlier, or the other day, yesterday or something, but I enjoyed this movie, but there is something that it felt like it was missing or something. And when you mentioned about how, like, it was shot in the day and they seemed safe, like, it didn't have that level of tension, I guess, is what I feel was missing from it. There's moments where they're specifically doing the visual gags for the 3D gimmick, which I think would have been better without, as it kind of takes away upon rewatching. So like when you're just watching like regular 2D or whatever, it took me out of it, because I know they were doing it just for that gimmick alone, and it doesn't really add to the story. It's not like, for example, like that baseball bat, like it's not a good frame or whatever, right? Like, it's not there as far as just a visual.
Oh, but it's great if you're waiting for them 3D moments. You're like, well,
it is.
Don't hit me with that bat, please.
Absolutely. The cut in the half handstand I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. The Rick's head being crushed was my favorite. For what went well, the iconic hockey mask. For even better, and we kind of talked about it throughout the episode, but I put, why is he killing them? Like, just because I thought that there was supposed to be kind of more of a reason behind it, based on like the first 2 movies. And then I put, so if you're a fan of campy horror, this is a buy, and I give it, being a jerk is better than being a nothing.
Oh shit. And how about the MPAA rating?
Oh yes, you are absolutely correct. My apologies. MPAA 26,764, and it was a big one at the end of the credits, because usually it's just like a little one off to the side. This was a big one right in your face.
Nice.
3D. Did they put those like drag lines behind it? Like, dun, 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 dun,
4,000 movies. 4,000 movies between last week and this week.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
10 years almost. 4,000 movies. Fuck. All right. Thank you, Cageman. Steve, why don't you hit us with your best shot, Fly Away?
All right. So, what went well? What could have been better? What went well for me and what went better, what could have been better for me, are, I think, the same thing, which is that they set up so many little interesting moments for each character. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I was excited because, they do the same thing in the other movies where they give these characters a little bit to talk about, and you want to see them come to some sort of, culmination of what they're talking about, or like a fruition, or a coward becoming a hero. And that didn't happen. And what could have been better would have been that. would have been us seeing at least a few of these characters through to what they had set up to begin with. I think my biggest example would be, they introduced this biker gang that are interesting enough visually, but then they have like an attitude, and then you develop them a little bit more when Fox is like, I don't think we should do this, man. This seems fucking crazy. And Ali's like, no one's gonna get hurt. We just need to get payback. And Loco's like, yeah, payback. And you're like, oh man, what are they gonna get payback for? And then they die immediately, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, what? I want to see what they were gonna do. And like utilize that with the characters that they interacted with earlier, Vera and
Shelly.
I almost called him Scully. And Scully. Vera and Scully. Yeah. Like, imagine those two groups had to get together, and they were the ones that survived, and everyone else died, and they're fighting Jason together, and like the gang, and like the hefty nerd who thinks he's not good enough for anyone, and like the hottest woman at the camp working with the bikers, and they're having to fight Jason. Like, I think that would make for a more interesting climax in the movie, which, unfortunately, those two characters, the nerd and the hot chick, die, and all of the bikers die. And then to even fucking give me a slap in the face, Ali's alive at the end. I'm like, wait, he's alive the whole time? Like, he could have been working with Shelly. Shelly and him should have teamed up and made like a treehouse attack or some shit. Anyway, that's my moment for that. And here's my review. Oh, wow. The movie is the same again. No hate on the template. It's what people expect and want from Jason Voorhees murder spree movies, but I would have liked something a bit different. Introducing a biker gang bent on revenge was a fun idea that could have been so much more fun. I would have liked to have seen Shelly and Ali eventually team up and put a hurting on Jason, especially with the limp dick reveal that Ali was still alive, only to be killed within seconds after that reveal. Yeah, I just am repeating everything I just said. The kills are fun, and the 3D gags had me sarcastically yelling things at my TV to the glee of no one. No one but me. And I enjoyed it anyway. The movie is the weakest installment of the series so far, but not for lack of interesting setups. The payoff of each of those setups is where it loses me. Though the original script for this probably would have been more interesting, the one that I told you guys about earlier with the insane asylum and all that stuff, just a few tweaks to this movie would have at least given it more of a personal identity to it as a Jason movie, to set it apart from the previous two Fridays. If only for the creation of the iconic mask, I'll say that this movie is watchable and fun enough, falling into the it's so bad it's good territory that I think all of us really like, despite its recycled set pieces and story beats. I give Friday the 13th, Part 3, an off-screen death, only for it to have it to come back and axe you in the head, or a shiny new hockey mask that immediately gets a long-lasting gash in it.
Ooh. I love a long-lasting gash.
Whoa! You should meet my ex-wife!
Jason,
right.
Just before you do your bit, I just had a thought. So when we first meet Shelly, he's wearing a mask of some sort, kind of see-through-ish.
Oh, yeah.
It's the mask from the Purge movies.
Yeah, remind me of the Purge, yeah. I just had a thought, though. What if they intended that to be the mask, and then as they continued filming, they're like, no, this isn't going to work.
I mean, that mask.
I guarantee you that was probably like they probably bought like a shitload of masks, and they're like, which one should we use?
That mask would have looked crazy with Jason Voorhees' fucking grotesque face, though.
Mangled.
I will say,
like it's crooked, and you can like see his eye is like not in the eye hole. Ding, ding, ding.
Here's my final thought on Jason 3. This movie compared. Sorry, let me start that.
This movie compared itself to the other two movies. Boy, oh boy!
I got the giggles. I got a bit of the giggles. This movie compared to the first two feels like they got the Jason formula right, which actually makes it feel a bit more by the numbers and a bit more sterile. I could see though in 1982 being stoked for this like to come out and then loving it. It definitely has that underwhelming third in a trilogy feeling where the kills are bigger and more elaborate. And they tried new things like the daytime sequence and having the climax take place during a windstorm instead of a rainstorm. I think I meant that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. They also finally get the origin of the mask for Jason. The 3D effects play as comedy in this modern age, but it's fun to pick out the moments that would have been in 3D at this time. I did enjoy it though. It moves at a snappy pace, and the final battle with Jason is clearly the best done final battle of the 3 so far. We saw some neat practical effects for gore, and I'm excited to see them build on that as we go forward further into the 80s. I also realized that during this we have a 10-year gap in practical effects, special effects between last week and this week. We've gone backwards 10 years, and I think that the filmmaking between the two movies is really similar considering how far apart they are. Just like that horror movie.
This is our own fault, though. Like, we decided to do it in reverse order for some idiotic reason.
It's because I wanted Halloween to be at the end, and I wanted Friday the 13th to fall as close to Friday the 13th as possible.
I didn't say I didn't know what the reason was.
It's just stupid.
I'm saying it's a dumb idea.
We saw some neat practical. I'm excited to see them build on. I actually gave this movie a 4 out of 5 just because it's a culmination of everything we've learned, everything the filmmakers learned from the first 2 movies, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to ever go higher than a 4 for these movies. This movie I'm going to remember.
I'm excited for you to see part 4 where you give it a 5.
Oh, fuck, probably not.
Part 4 is sick. It's my favorite one.
That's fair. I give it. Here's my actual review. I give it an HD re-release in HDR, IMAX, 3D, 4DX, AVX, ScreenX, D-Box. The movie was
but then the projector malfunctioned. You're like, God damn it! Ding ding ding.
The movie was a fun romp overall, and what went well was the suspense building in the final battle / chase. Even better, they could have spent a little bit more time and care on the 3D effects. And they didn't make or break the movie, so this could have just been not 3D and a better overall movie. But I do get that in 1982, 3D technology for horror, it's that's what you use it for. Let's make a 3D version of everything. And we went through that in 2006, where there's I don't care, let's put this comedy in 3D for some reason. And I think that is everything for this week's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, and people of Earth, for Jason, for Kaylin, for Steven, I'm Jason.
And for Steven and Jason, I'm Kellen.
For Jason, for Kaylin, I am Steven.
And I have to ask you guys a question, and that is, hey, did you see this one?
Hey! Did you see this one?
Hey, have you ever been frightened in the third dimension? And also, have you seen this one?
Hey, am I poking your eyes out?
Oh God, that's actually frightening me. It looks more 3D than I thought it would. Wow.
It's funny because you did that 3D gag while the end credits were playing. Because
was anybody scared that when he was taking a shit at the beginning of the movie that he was gonna 3D shit all over us?